So we feed the children, right? In your society?
Yeah, I think charities would. I
No,
mean,
no,
it's
no.
proven
Not
more
charities
effective than
would.
grocery.
This is a matter of would you do it?
Would I feed children? Yes,
You
I would
set up
feed children.
society. Are the children fed?
Yeah,
Yes or no?
I set up society. Are
By
the children
necessity,
fed?
by mandate of your holy law, are children fed in your society? You're a dictator.
By the non-aggression principle, they're not. And that's really the only way you
They're
can
not.
organize
So
a
you would
society.
let children starve in your society, right? Hello.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me good?
Yeah, I think I can hear you good. Chat, let me know if the audio is good on both of our ends. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good. So I saw some of your videos in the past. I actually agree with you on a lot of things, like regarding
Cool.
abortion.
That's good.
Basically all your social takes. But I was just kind of wondering, like, to what extent do you believe in the non-aggression principle?
Sure. Just real quick before we get started, can you just give me your name and then just verify that you're over the age of 18, please?
Yeah, I go by ASY the best on Discord. I am over the age of 18, yeah.
All right, excellent. And then what was your question? I'm sorry.
And then the question was like, to what extent do you actually agree with the non-aggression principle?
The non-aggression principle. You'll have to refresh me on what that is.
Like the NAP is basically this concept that we don't have a right to initiate force on anybody.
I think in general I agree with that. I think that you only have the right to initiate force on somebody. Like, and it depends on like the level of force as well. Um, the only reason you would initiate force on somebody is if they're like committing. So, like, if the alternative is that more people like, I don't want to say more people would suffer, but like more people would have their autonomy taken away. I don't think it's okay to like take somebody's autonomy away. For instance, like if somebody else, like if one person's organs can save five people's lives, I don't think it's okay to enforce like that person to undergo death in order to save those other five people, if that makes sense. But I think in general that's a good principle. Yeah.
So I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like ethically, you would prescribe more to like a consequentialist or utilitarian perspective on these issues.
In general, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure
So
there are
I'm curious,
exceptions, but
like what would the justification be for something like taxation to you?
taxation is what allows us to live in a society. Basically, like that's how we have roads. That's how we have libraries. It's how we like it's public funding. We elected a government in order to like our government owns the money anyway, right? So like our government gives us the money in order to keep an economy going and keep like free trade going. But ultimately, the money belongs to the government. Like they can take it back at any point they want.
Did governments like invent the concept of money?
They own it. Like they're the ones who print it. Without a government, your money means nothing.
Oh, I mean, in the past, for like most of human history, money was backed by commodities, and it
Sure.
was decentralized, and we had markets that functioned a lot like they do today, but with less, boom bust cycles and all of these distortions that happen from central banking.
Uh, yeah, but like now, money. Like I don't believe in money as a concept. Basically, like I just think that world. Like I, I think there should be some kind of central unit of exchange for like what's the word for like luxury purposes. Sure. In that sense, I believe that like money and monetary exchange can be a good thing, but like money is really just used as a gatekeeper in its current iteration to keep people from like having access to shelter and food and whatnot. So in that sense, I don't really believe in money.
Well, I mean, in its current iteration, I mean, basically every society in human history has had some form of money as an exchange value, just because otherwise we'd have to go around saying like, I will directly give you this for shelter, right? And then like what? So I'm guessing you're
Yeah,
not
but I just think
advocating for
people
like
like we
a
live in a post
barter
scarcity
society.
world. We live in a post scarcity world. I think people should just have shelter. That
Wait,
should
what do
just
you
be
mean by
automatic.
scarcity?
I mean, like, we have more homes than we have people who don't have homes. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Everybody should have access to shelter.
I mean, I agree, but
Right.
when we say everybody should have access to shelter, I mean, well, what would your policy prescriptions be to achieve that?
Everybody gets a house.
Everybody gets a house. Like how?
Yes.
Like, does the government buy them a house?
Sure.
Right. So basically, you would say that like the role the government is legitimized in taxation because they can provide good things for people.
I mean, what else is the government's purpose?
I mean, originally the government was founded just to protect rights. That was the idea of like
And I believe in the right
the
to housing.
original. Okay, but like the right to housing, like it can't exist unless you infringe upon people's right to self-ownership and property.
How so?
Because to give them housing, the government has to allocate resources to do that.
Yeah,
No, there's
they have the
no state in the
resources.
world that they do, but they get these resources from their citizens. They don't just create it out of nothing.
Yeah, the
They're just
agreement is that
allocating resources for
think of
society.
the government is basically an employee. The government is like I want the government to be elected into office by the people and have like in its current iteration at least like I don't know if I'm an anarchist or whatnot, but like in the short term, the government should have power over the people and have authority to like arrest people and allocate resources and such so that people who aren't part of the government can live their lives free of worry that they'll like not have a house over their roof over their heads or food to eat. I think that's a fair trade-off.
Okay, so I guess you just view it like completely consequentially, which makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
basically.
but like in general, like if we were to partake in action that was aggressive, and then like I guess I don't see how you could justify it like after the fact. Like yes, I'm stealing from you, but after I steal from you, I am providing housing to these people. Like
You don't have to pay
that's
taxes
okay
to
to
the
you.
government. You can go live on an island, man.
I mean, that's not true. You have to pay taxes to the state. Like
No,
even
you can go. You can
if
go live on an island. You can do that right now.
I
You can
can
buy
go
an
live
island
on
and
an
go live on
island.
it.
Okay, so by that logic, we shouldn't attempt to fix any issue in our society. We should
I
just
didn't say
allow
that. I
the,
said if
the
you don't want to pay taxes, go live on an island,
that could be true for any issue.
such as.
I mean, if you say like I don't like the way that the U.S. government treats minorities, you could just say, well, I guess minorities should just go live in islands. Like it doesn't solve the issue.
No, I think that minorities should be treated equally and fairly. It's not.
Yeah,
I don't see.
obviously.
But the difference is, I don't see taxation as an issue. I see it as a necessity. The government needs resources in order to allocate resources
Okay, so I mean, the obvious follow-up to that is like, why is the government in particular better at allocating resources than the free market?
because they were elected into office by people who trust them. Ideally,
Okay, so when you're a consumer, you're only looking at like the products that you actually like want slash need, right?
sure.
Do all like voters have the same wants and needs?
I think they all have the same basic needs. I think all people have very basic needs that are essentially the same. Yes.
Okay, and then do all voters like actually like take into account how needs might be different, like different parts of the country? Like, if I was
No.
a voter in like, there's nobody that's perfectly informed on this. Even our legislatures, like in Congress, the amount of laws that they actually pass compared to the federal agencies, it's like a tenth of what the bureaucracy creates. So if even like our elected officials don't fully know what our government is doing, I guess I just find it hard to believe that we can truly like anybody can actually be an educated voter.
I mean, I believe myself to be at least a partially educated voter. I think you can be. I think that most people aren't. It would be good to like, but in order to make people educated voters, you have to free up their time, right? And they're not going to have free time if they don't have access to basic resources that they need. So, like, if you're going to be an educated voter, like, I think it's very important that you have access to the resources, like basic resources that you require to live. So, in order to make a more educated populace, that would, these two different ideas feed into each other. Where it's like, how do you, I, am I making sense? Like, if you have a well-fed and well taken care of populace, they're more likely to be educated and know who and what they're voting for. So that's why I make it a
I mean,
priority, or part of the
I
reason.
totally agree that it would help. Obviously, like there's people in our society that are struggling, and that's terrible. And they can't focus on politics, of course. But like the
Right.
people in Congress, like I said, they don't even know like the laws being passed or like the regulations being put in place by the federal government fully. Like a lot of them don't even read through the bills that they vote for. So I mean, if these rich, privileged people who their job is theoretically to understand how our government works, and it happens on both sides of the aisle, like they can't even figure it out. I guess I'm wondering why we trust ourselves and other people to make decisions that have that much impact.
Well, if you have a politician who doesn't read through the bills that they're voting for, when that's literally their job, eventually that's going to come back to bite them. And I think that there should be some kind of system in place in order to oust them so that they don't continue making that mistake.
So I mean, when the Senate comes together and they think about like what not filibuster, what omnibus bill they're going to pass next, like do you think all of the members like in the Senate actually have the same level of input, or do you think that the leadership kind of just meets behind closed doors, comes up with like kind of the uniparty agenda, like we're going to keep funding defense, we're going to keep subsidizing our friends like in Silicon Valley, etc., and then they give it to the Senate, and then I mean that's kind of the system, isn't it, Alec?
That's usually a result of corporate influence, not like the politicians themselves. It's like a result of monetary influence
Right, I totally
and
agree.
incentives.
It's the
Yeah.
result of corruption,
So
but
that's why I
I
said,
mean,
like,
just still,
you know, just like that's why I don't even really believe in money that much.
I mean, I just struggle to understand how we can trust like a concept like democracy when, I mean, it's inherent that's going to result in
But why
party
do you
structures
trust?
like this.
But you're an ANCAP, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So why do you trust like Ancapistan? Like, why do you think things would be better in Ancapistan when like corporations are free to do whatever they want?
Well, I mean, with the way I view politics and just life in general is that like consent should always be the value. I take the NAP very seriously. And I think that that's like the reason why I believe in it is not necessarily like what might happen, but just that we should all treat each other with the same rights and the same way that we would want to be treated.
What if I don't consent to
But I
go
mean,
into work tomorrow?
the no go is great.
Yeah, and then I don't make money, and then I can't live.
Okay, that's your choice. I mean, you have a right to.
What do you mean
I
that's my
mean,
choice?
if you take it
Go
to
to
its logical
work or die? Is
conclusion.
that my choice?
I mean, there's a lot of different choices. I mean, you could say like
Work or
I don't.
die,
Eh, it's still a
right?
choice though. Like,
But
obviously, like the way we live in a scarce world, Alec. Like you have to work.
no,
We
we
have to have an
don't. We really
economy.
don't. We have more houses
Okay,
than we have homeless people in in the United States. That's true. Why can we not just house them?
the reason we can't just house everybody is that obviously like you need people to maintain the houses. So I mean, if you're saying that
Okay,
like we need more, like there needs to be an
incentivize.
incentive for
Yeah,
renters to have
incentivize it.
property and like rent it out.
Okay, repair the houses or you
Incentive.
don't eat. Is that the incentive?
The incentive is repair the houses or you don't eat.
Yeah, work or die. That's the incentive that you're proposing, right? Work or die.
Yeah, I mean you.
No, I
I don't.
disagree with that. Incentivize the work in other ways. You don't have to say work or die. You can say, hey, listen, you get the basic necessities that you need by default, but if you work, you get a little extra, and you can like buy a yacht or like go on a vacation. You know, like you don't need vacations, but they're certainly nice to have, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, incentivize it,
So I
reward it,
mean, what do you think would happen though if the government said housing was a right? Like there would be no more private housing sector, right?
based.
Based.
Yeah, good.
So what happens when the government controls like an entire chain of production and economy?
When the government what now?
Like what happens when the government establishes a monopoly over something in the economy?
Well, then there will be democratic control over the housing market, which I think is great, is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that's one result, but like I
Yeah,
would believe that
and
that
we can
would
agree
create
that that would be a good result, right?
democratic control over the housing progress
Yeah.
or process. No.
Why not?
Like I said, like there's nothing for that. Like, I mean, I would say like if we have really small governments, like in a local area, like I would even grant you that like Yeah, that might be a really great thing if you just had a community and like the community like all came together and they agreed they wanted to pool their resources like this. But like if the federal government did that, that'd be terrible.
Why is it okay on a small scale but not a large scale?
Because there is like such a thing as diseconomies of scale. Voters like don't have a lot of buy-in to what happens to people that are out of sight, that they're out of mind. And I mean, I had no issue with communities or like even like I guess we would say like quasi states like on a localized level. I just don't think that the like a large country like ours with so many different interests can properly represent everybody.
I think it can. I think that
I
most
mean,
people want good things for both themselves and other people. I believe that.
okay, but let's say Alec, that everybody actually did research the housing market and they come up with their own conclusions. Like there's plenty of academics and like different perspectives on how we solve it. Like there's a lot of people like I would obviously say like deregulation's the answer, but like other people might come to the conclusion the state should just provide housing. And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily like think that having either one of those opinions is like radical or like hard to come by. But I mean, people have conflicting ideas of how to allocate resources. So I mean, it's going to lead to conflict if you attempt to have the
Yeah,
state provide these
that's why I
things.
believe in a democratic allocation of resources, aka a democratic government.
What do you mean by that, then? Because that's not what we have now, then.
Well, we have a democracy. We do live in a democracy. It is like not perfect. I would change a lot of things, like take away the electoral map or the what is it the not the electoral map, the what is it called,
The
the
college.
thank you, the electoral college. I would take that away. I would make it ranked choice. I would make it more democratic, but we do live in a democracy, and I think that democratic rule with with protections for like minority groups would be the way to go. Like it's not perfect, it never will be perfect, but I think that's the closest to perfect that we could get, unless you have a
I
better
mean,
system in mind.
I would generally agree that like as far as like the types of governments we see in the world today, like democracy, especially our kind of rights-based democracy, is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah,
But I mean, voters like are inherently less informed than consumers. Like if I was just shopping for a house, I would know a lot more about what I want, about what I need, than if I was shopping for a political candidate, for instance. And there's a lot of things that I mean, we can both agree that we need shelter. But like some people might propose that like a car is a human right. If we start
that what is
interpreting rights in this positivist
that
lens,
what's a human right?
that a car could be, if we just start assuming that like
Well, let's talk about that. Do you
material
need
goods could
do
be
most
rights.
people need a car to get to work?
I don't believe so, Alec. I'm just saying that if we go down this road of just declaring things to be rights
Yeah, so we
because
can have that
people
discussion on what is a
generally
right and
need
what
them.
isn't. But like, if
Yeah.
you need a car, like if people absolutely need cars in order to make ends meet, then yes, I believe that a car is a human right.
Okay.
Like if you
Okay. I mean,
absolutely need a
fair
car
enough.
to get to your job, then you should have a car. Period. End of story.
Maybe we should talk about what a right is then.
Sure.
Like, so to you, what is a right?
It's whatever you need to survive on a basic level.
So I mean, by that
And
logic,
thrive in
like
some
this,
circumstances.
we wouldn't have a right to own guns. You don't need those to survive.
I believe you have a right to own guns, yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Let me modify it. So I think that human right is something that. Ooh, that's a good question, actually. A human right is something you need to survive, or it can be a matter of. Oh man, I don't know how to define this exactly, but it's essentially something like my baseline is if you're doing it and it's not hurting other people, then it's your human right to do that. And on top of that, you also get the basic necessities you need to survive. Is that fair?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think that's a good position to
Yeah.
have. But like, my issue is like, I would love to live in a society that did have like communities that provided all these basic resources to people. But I think like as a prerequisite towards these positivist prescriptions, we need to ensure that people like aren't being infringed upon. And I mean, I get that like it's easy to say that taxes are justified like through utilitarian perspective. But we
If
can't
you don't
just
think
like
you're
start
justified, go
infringing
live
on,
on an island, man.
like I said before. We could just say all day about any social issue or any political issue that if
But
you don't like it, just leave.
where do you think all of the public accommodations that you enjoy come from? Like highways, libraries, parks, the firefighters, the police. Like where do you think that comes from? If you don't want any of those things, feel free to go live on an island and not have them. But I
I
like living
think
in a
that
society where I
currently
have those things
it comes from the state because they're like either
because of
monopolized or there's
taxes.
incredibly high barriers to entry.
It's
Just
because of
because the
taxes
state
that we have
provides
those
them
things.
now,
Yeah.
yes, Alec, but just because it provides them now doesn't mean it's the most effective way to provide them.
Then effective way would you propose? Private?
Well, I would presume I would propose the privatization of all these services, and
Okay, so
this could be
McDonald's.
done.
So I envision this: McDonald's highway. You have to pay $25 every time you get on the road, but if you pay $50 a month, you can get gold access, and you get to go 70 miles an hour as opposed to 55, which everybody else has to go. And if you're caught without your gold pass going 70 miles an hour, you get arrested. Does that sound good?
I feel like that could work in situations, but honestly, like when we
No, why?
privatize all
Wait,
these
why would that work? This is stupid. I don't want premium access to fucking highways.
Alex, you're already paying for highways. That's where your
I
taxes go.
know for taxes, and I'm fine with that. I
So
don't
would
want
you rather
I
have
don't
the
want a
choice?
private. I don't have any like democratic control over a private corporation. I don't trust them.
So let's say like I don't use the highway nearly at all. I mean I take my public transportation around,
Okay, good for
and
you. But I
so
do,
why
and
am I
most
paying
people
for
do.
it? Like if it was privatized,
You're
why
allowed to use
I
it.
wouldn't
If
pay
any
for it?
at any point you can get on the highway, you're allowed.
Yeah, but like so they should just be providing services that I might not want or ever use, and I
Yes,
should just have to pay for that.
yes, because most people want to and or use them. Yes,
That's great. And if most people want and or use them, then there obviously be market demand, and they could be funded voluntarily, and it could
they
be
should be
competitive, and
available, no
prices could
charge
be
at the
lower.
point of entry. They should be available for no charge at the point. Like, this is like the same way that I say healthcare should be free. Everybody's not going to need the same amount of healthcare, but if we can agree that healthcare is a human right, which I don't know if you agree with that, but I think that it's a human right because that's literally in my nurse's code of ethics as well. Healthcare is a human right. Therefore, anybody who needs care, like let's say you have a seizure and you're about to die, I believe that you deserve healthcare right then and there. You should not have to pay for it.
Okay, so you believe that if you had a seizure and you're about to die, and there's a doctor nearby, he could be compelled by force to treat you?
He's compelled by his doctor's code of ethics. If he doesn't treat me, he should lose his license. If he has the
Okay, I mean,
material to do it, if he has like the capability of treating me right then and there and he doesn't, then yeah, I don't want that person being a doctor.
but no, I'm not asking about like the consequence of him not doing it, but like I'm asking like if it is a right, somebody watching would have the ability to force him to perform that, right? To save you and make sure your rights are being enforced.
I think that
So
I have the right to health care. If somebody takes the doctor's oath and they don't perform their duty as a doctor, they're forfeiting their title as a doctor. I think that's fine.
okay, but nobody watching the situation has a right to compel them to save you.
If they're a doctor, they sure do.
Okay, so
They're
you're
like,
telling
you're a
me
doctor, save that guy. Hey, what if it's your child? What if it's your 10-year-old? Hey, you're a doctor, please save my child. Oh, sorry, I don't want to.
so,
What are you going
so
to
could
do?
that person at that point then say, I'm going to attack you or hurt you if you do not save this person?
I'm going to attack you or hurt you?
Yeah. Or, like
I
I get like you can shame people all you want, but like fundamentally when it's a right, like it has to be enforceable.
I think there's two sides that you can look at this. One is the emotional side. The emotional side of me would say, yeah, I would understand if somebody would attack you for not treating their child, especially if it's like imagine, okay, I'm not going to treat your child who's having a seizure because he's black, right? Like if I were the parent of that child, I would be like, yeah, I would say like I will threaten you until you treat my child, and I think that in a court of law, that person could be forgiven in many ways. I don't think that should be the standard, but I think that yes, you
Yeah.
could forgive that person because that's literally a life you're talking about. Like the alternative is if I don't hold this person at gunpoint, my child is going to die. So the outcome is a child's life is saved, and I think that's fine.
Okay. I mean like oh, okay. So you would say it would be okay if they saved the child's life to coerce somebody into doing something.
In some circumstances,
Right. Okay.
I think it needs to be
So
reasonable. I think it needs to be justifiable. Like if somebody has a doctor's license and they're literally not doing their due diligence as a fucking doctor, then yeah, I think that like a person who's like sitting there watching their child die would be like justified in saying, "Hey, I know you're a doctor. Save my child."
I mean, like I think that's certainly likely to happen. I can understand why it would happen.
Right.
But the point of ethics isn't to like empathize with certain situations. It's supposed to be to solve interpersonal conflict. I mean, I would say that you cannot force people in or attempt to force people into any action, just because you feel sad or really upset about something.
Then
Like
at
you might do it,
minimum,
but that's not
then at
legitimate.
minimum they need to lose their doctor's license. They're no longer a doctor. If they don't want to treat people who are dying, they don't get to be a doctor. Period. End of story.
I mean, that's another thing, like the whole doctor's license thing. But I mean, yeah, like if you have agreed to serve people, and there's like some kind of contract, I guess, in the anarcho-capitalistic society saying that you will serve people always. Sure should be for doctors, obviously, that's your job. Like, yeah, that should be removed. But I just don't think that like there is an intrinsic right to force people to save other people's lives.
But if you're a doctor, if you're just an average civilian, like you're an engineer, and somebody says
Mhm.
save my child's life, no, you don't have the duty to save that person's life. You don't even know how. If you have
Well, I
CPR
mean,
training, part of CPR training is like, yeah, you should try to save somebody's life if you have the ability to. I just don't understand why this is a silly scenario to me. Why would somebody be a doctor and not attempt to save somebody's life?
I mean, it could be all kinds of reasons.
Like,
I'm not here to like say how legitimate this scenario is or how likely it is. I'm just giving it as an example and seeing how you would address it ethically. That's all.
I just think it's a silly scenario because if you're a doctor, you're going and somebody's having a seizure in front of you, you're going to save their life.
Sure, like 99.9% of the time you will. But if
Yeah.
you, for whatever reason, don't like them, like let's say that like you personally feel them to be a bad person for whatever reason, maybe they wouldn't.
Okay, you don't get to
So
be a
like I
doctor
said, it's just
anymore.
an example. Okay,
I'm
sure.
fine with stripping that person of their license.
But I mean, you're going back to the broader point about like being able to compel people to perform or
That's not
pay
compelling.
taxes.
That's literally you taking an oath saying, I will save people's lives if I'm a doctor, and then you don't save their life. You're breaking the doctor's code.
No, I totally agree. Like you are, if you have, like you said, you are a doctor and like you have pledged to a certain code, you are
Okay, so
probably
we
not
agree
a
on that.
doctor anymore.
Right,
But I
so
mean,
we agree
I'm
on
trying to
that.
go back to the broader point that like we have a right to tax people because it leads to better outcomes for them or stops them from dying or whatever.
We have the right to tax people because the government owns the money. It's literally the government's money. It's not yours.
So
The government gives it to you. The
so what
government prints
happens
it.
in countries when people lose faith in the money and they start using other currencies? What happens to those people?
When they lose faith in the country's money and they start using other currencies.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
I mean, Argentina, I'm sure you know that their economy was completely ruined by inflation and Keynesian economics and attempting to give positive
Sure.
rights and housing to everybody. And what happened was people quit using their currency because it was so inflated that they started using US dollars instead. And the government responded by imprisoning people, um, fining people ludicrous amounts of money,
Okay, so the
confiscating
government,
US
the,
dollars.
the government reacted in a reactionary fashion, whereby instead of addressing the root problem, they started imprisoning people. They're not going to fix the problem that way.
Right, but that's inherently what's going to happen because any government in the world right now is funded through their own currency for the most part, like as you said. And they have an incentive not to let people trade or engage in economic activity without their currency, because if they do, then it completely delegitimizes them and basically makes it so they can't participate in the economy or even hire people
So
anymore at a certain point.
you shouldn't be forced to tax people at the threat of jail. That's your position.
Yeah, yeah, obviously.
But you do believe that you should be forced to work at the threat of death.
Forced to work.
Yes, it is,
That
man.
might
It's
that
work or
might be a bigger
die.
that might be a bigger issue is that like you're prescribing to the labor theory of values, you think that people are being exploited.
Okay, what should happen to me if I decide I don't want to work tomorrow? I just never work again.
What should happen to you? I
Yeah,
don't
what should
have
happen?
any claim on that. I
What
mean,
do you
like
mean?
maybe you could go.
Come on, don't be a pussy. Come on, like what do you think should happen?
So in my society, you could go live in a co-op with other people and just farm and hang out and do whatever you want or
I don't have
not.
a co-op. I
And
don't know anybody. I'm a loner.
well, I guess in that situation, if you literally nobody knows you, nobody cares about you, you don't care about yourself enough to provide yourself
It's
resources,
not that I don't care.
then
No,
I
I
guess
love
you,
I
you
love
just
doing
die.
things. I love playing video games. I love crocheting. I love streaming on YouTube, but I don't make enough money to sustain myself.
Yeah, I mean that's sad.
So you
People,
die.
there's charities, but I guess you don't know anybody, so you can't even
Charities
go to
won't accept
charity.
me.
Okay,
There's no
so
charities
I
within
mean at
like
that
driving
point,
distance.
I
I
can't
don't feel
help
like
you.
doing the
Like
paperwork.
there's people in any system that just refuse all help, you know?
Right. So your answer is work or die.
No.
Yes, it is,
Give you all
man.
kinds of alternatives. Like
Huh?
you could go join a co-op, go live with other
You
people
could,
that
but I
like
don't
agree
feel
that
like
they
it.
don't
I
want
don't feel like joining
wages.
a fucking co-op. I'm a loner. I want to be alone. I want to play
Can't
my little
help
video
you.
games. Exactly. Work
Okay,
or die.
imagine we live in a society where you could literally just never work. There are so many jobs
Yes.
that people
Yes,
would
that's the
never do
society I
without
want.
incentive.
Perfect. Pog.
Great. So we would have just sewage everywhere. There'd be trash laying
That's not
everywhere on the
true.
streets.
Is there
There would
sewage
be.
everywhere in your house?
You know why there's not? Because there's
Why
people
not?
that are paid by the government many
No,
times over
no, my
minimum
point
wage
is,
to
do you
maintain my
shit
sewage.
and piss all over your house?
I don't, but
No,
obviously, if
do
we
you use the
got rid
toilet?
of
Why do you use the
the
toilet?
market, why do I use the toilet?
Yes. Why don't you just shit where you sit?
Because that's gross.
Exactly. There's gross because there's incentive to shit in the toilet.
Okay, so you're saying that in a society where nobody's obligated to work, so they're all provided for, that there's gonna be people that volunteer to go clean out the sewers and fix issues like that.
Not volunteer. Incentivize them. Tell them, hey,
But
you'll get extra
how?
money. You'll get extra whatever it is. Like you'll get to go on a vacation. You'll get to do this and that. You reward them. You don't say, hey, do this or die.
Okay, so you incentivize them, but
Yes.
so you believe in like labor vouchers is what you're saying, basically?
I don't care how you do it. I've never really sat down to think about it that in depth, but I think that people should just be provided with the basic necessities they need, and then their government officials should be elected in order to care for, like, take care of the basic necessities of a society, like working sewage. And if they're not taking care of that, kick them out.
Okay. I mean, the solution usually in communist countries that have existed in the real world is to just give people medals or like attempt to make them feel proud of their labor, and that generally doesn't work.
Okay, I think it's stupid. I don't agree with that. Give them real incentives.
Okay, real incentives.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would agree. You need to give people incentives to do
Yes.
anything in an economy.
Well, your
So,
version is work or die. That is your version. You can deny it all you want, but that's exactly what you're saying.
I mean,
You're saying tough
that's the
luck.
reality. We live in a scarce world, Alec. Like,
No,
people do
we
need to
don't.
work to live.
We have plenty of. Do you know we have more food than like we need? Like, we could feed the world like 10 times over with the amount of food that we have. Do you know how much we waste?
United, the United States definitely could. You're not wrong.
Yes,
There's a lot of misallocation.
yes. It's called post scarcity, and we live in it.
But Alec, imagine everybody just quit working. What would happen?
People would still find ways to be productive. People do. You have a
But
very
then they're
bleak view
working.
of humanity, my friend. I think that people will just find ways to be productive. And if they don't, we can incentivize them. We can say, hey, you get a little bit of extra. But I think that people should
So,
just be taken care of at the point of entry into the world, aka birth. You're born, you get like you automatically when you turn 18, you get access to a house, you get access to food on the table, water in the faucet, a toilet to shit in. Like you just get these things, and I think that's fine. We have the resources to do that.
somebody has to provide all those things, all those things. So basically,
Yeah,
we'd
and
just be
people
taking
would.
so there's just basically we're still using incentives. We're just all doing it through the government, so we don't have any actual price signals.
The difference is your
Um,
version of incentive is work or die,
okay,
and I can
do you
always water
agree?
it down to that.
This is a pretty simple question. Like, do you agree monopolies are bad?
Yes.
And then
In
why would
general.
it be
I
good to
think I think
monopolize
oh,
more things in society?
let me back up. I think a monopoly of the people is good because that's democracy.
I mean, it's great as long as you're in the majority, Alec. But I
It's
don't
called
want to live in a
dictatorship of the
society.
proletariat. You ever heard of that?
Yeah, I'm aware of the term.
Yeah, it's good.
It's
How else are you
great.
going to
So,
structure society?
how else are you going to structure society?
Yeah.
You don't need a hierarchy in society. It's pretty obvious.
I would like to dismantle the hierarchy at some point. I don't consider myself an anarchist, but I guess all of my beliefs water back down to anarchy. But in its current iteration, I think that right now, since we have a government, we might as well use it for the purpose of taking care of people, right?
Okay, so do you believe I have a right to initiate force against other people, Alec?
If it's a difference of your survival, sure.
Okay. I
Yeah,
mean,
why
like
not?
at
Like
that point, that we just
if it's
have
the
the.
difference if it's the difference between your survival or bodily autonomy, like if that's the difference, then yeah, sure.
I guess I just don't understand how that's anything like more than just the law of the jungle. Like people just can do whatever they want as long as it somehow benefits them internally
I
because they
believe in
all
a
have the right to aggress.
I believe in a democratically elected system, like a rule of the majority, and with
And where
protections
has
for
that
the
worked?
minority.
Where has that worked?
Well, I mean, it's we have it does. It's not a matter, by the way, of whether or not it has worked in the past. This is what I believe can work and will work if we implement it. But I think right now the United States, even with its broken democracy, has a much more functioning society than places with like a monarchy or where people like just don't like. I think that I don't know. Like I just don't know what else would work better.
I mean, I think that's the issue is that we live in this world. I mean, a lot of communists and socialists say the same thing about capitalism, where we just look at what's around us and we think it's inevitable, but it's obviously not. Like there's all kinds of societies that do actually practice the NAP. Like there's that piece does. They don't coerce labor of other people. They don't collect taxes amongst their members. They just voluntarily work together, and it's a great thing. So I mean, I agree that like when you just look around at the ideologies and the frameworks of society that are accepted by states and governments, democracy is the best one. But I
Yeah,
mean, there is alternatives, obviously, Alec.
like what?
Like I just mentioned, the Zapistas in Mexico. They're a society that was completely without our concept of hierarchies in the state, and they basically just worked together. They didn't have to
Yeah, by through
tell people to do
democracy, they
anything.
all work together. That's the point.
Yeah, but it wasn't. I mean, they're anarchists, Alec. Like they have like a different idea of democracy. It's like a direct democracy type thing where they have
Do
everybody's completely equal.
you understand? Most anarchists are not ANCAP, right? And they're also like pro democracy.
Most anarchists are left wing anarchists, yes, but they're not
Yes,
pro democracy in the sense that we understand it. Because they would say that like everybody should be equal. We should dismantle the hierarchies. And I mean, I
I
agree.
don't think
Everybody should have
anarchists.
same abilities.
What do you mean everybody should be equal?
And that is the point of anarchism, regardless of whatever creed it is to
Yeah, but
dismantle
like what do you mean
unjustified
when you say
hierarchy.
that? Like what's in your
When I
head?
say
Like
everybody being equals, they have the same rights. They treat everybody the way they would be treated.
yeah,
They accept other people's autonomy, and nobody supposes that they have the right to allocate resources for other people.
nobody supposes what? Sorry.
Nobody attempts to believe that they can better allocate resources for other people than they can.
Yeah, but somebody's got to allocate the resources, right? Like in an
Yeah,
anarchist
individuals
society.
can. That's what capitalism has proved that
But what if
people do know how to allocate resources.
but why can't the individuals say, "Hey, allocating resources is actually pretty hard and time consuming. Let's elect people to do it for us." And that way we can
But
like people can do it for us, and then that way we can focus our energy on other things, and we can give those
I mean,
people incentives to do that.
I totally agree. Allocating resources is hard and time consuming. That's why capitalism provides things like price signals to indicate to investors what their demand is, right? 'Cause if we're the state and we're making all the decisions, there's no price signals. We don't really know the price or opportunity cost of any of the things we're producing. We don't really know the demand fully. Like we can approximate it, right? But the result is that there's going to be surpluses and shortages in all kinds of different goods and services, right? And when we let the market figure it out, then individuals make decisions, they create price signals, and then the market can move to meet them.
Okay, hold that thought for just a second. I gotta go to the bathroom real quick. Sorry, I'm gonna put you
All
on
right.
mute for a sec. All right, I'll be right back, guys. All. Okay, I'm back. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So you were talking about price indicators, right?
Yeah, yeah, they're crucial.
Why are they crucial?
All right, let's pretend that like you're making that you have a plot of land and you're going to develop it, right?
Okay.
So let's say you can choose between like housing
Oh,
development.
raiders are coming. Raiders are coming. They took over the land. Now what?
I mean, this
They
isn't like I'm trying
they
to
used their
explain
guns
to
and
you
they
like
took over
price.
the land. Now what? We live in
I'm trying
Ancapistan,
to
right?
I'm trying to explain to you how price signals work compared to
Right,
like
but
what you're
we live in
advocating for.
Ancapistan, right? So raiders came and took over the land and they say it's theirs now.
Well,
Now what?
I'm just demonstrating how like, even right now, like in any market, that price signals are important.
Right,
But obviously,
we live but in an Ancapistan society, like raiders come and take my land. What do I do?
I mean, you contract with other people or like a defense service to
Contract.
protect
I
you.
don't have any money. The raiders took all my shit.
Well, then the okay, the insurance provider was still have an incentive to
Insurance
protect you
provider.
because
The insurance provider denied my claim.
well, why would they? They have an incentive. If you're being infringed upon and
But
these
they're gonna.
raiders,
You
quote
think they're gonna
unquote,
pay for all my shit that I just lost? They're an organization that thrives on making money. Does your insurance provider pay for all of your claims? I would love to know
okay,
your insurance provider if that's the case.
I'm gonna explain to you how we solve this, Alec. First of all, this is a red herring to actually
How do
talking
I?
about
But
resource
no, you have to help me
allocation.
solve this first because raiders came and took my land. If we're living in Kapistan, raiders came and took my land. Now, how do I solve this problem? The insurance denied my claim. Now what?
Oh, there's like literally almost infinite insurance providers. So first thing you can still
But
find
they all
another one.
denied it. They're all trying to make money. They're not going to
Yeah,
approve my
if they want
claim.
to make money, well, what will make them money? Somebody aggressing upon rights that they can take to court and they can collect
Okay, so my
damages
current
from.
insurance. So you're saying my current insurance provider denied my claim. Therefore, I should find a different one, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, so I'm homeless. I don't have any food. I don't have any water. But you're suggesting that I now take up some paperwork and submit a new claim to a new insurance company where I have to provide all my information and have them process that, and hopefully pray that they'll accept my claim, even though I have no money to pay them. Is
They
that
have
what
an
you're saying?
incentive to, yeah, because they
They have
can
an
bring these
incentive to. I
people
don't have any
private
money. What's
arbitration
their
and stuff.
incentive? I don't have any
They
money
can collect the money from the raiders. That's
from the
their
Raiders.
incentive.
Why would the Raiders pay
Yeah,
them for my insurance?
because private arbitration, they could arbitrate it.
Arbitrate it? How?
I mean, like, okay, so if you live in a society, right, where everything is done in a decentralized fashion, when you make exchanges, you're going to have somebody undersign that. Like, you're going to have a company say, like, yes, we vouch for
I don't
ASY the
have anything to
best or Alec
exchange.
Gunter.
I don't
What?
have anything to
You
exchange. It was
never
all
explained.
taken from me.
Great. So you've never done anything in a society, you don't know anybody, and you're attacked.
Yes.
Congratulations, homeless people die all the time in the state system. It's
So
really
you're
sad.
just saying die then, man. This is my
No, I'm not.
point. Yes, you just did though. Yes, you did. Come on,
Okay,
man.
you really want to
You're like
defend
just die
policing?
then. But that's what you're saying. Come on.
No, I'm
Be
not
real
saying
with
that at
me.
all, Alec.
Yes, you just
Have an
did.
incentive
Okay,
to
what do I do then?
protect
Okay, what
you.
do I do then? What do I do?
They have an incentive to protect you because they can collect on the damages that these people are causing or attempting to cause on you. That's the incentive. Right now, the state has no incentive to help you if you're homeless.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Insurance company sends somebody out. They kill him. Now what?
then they can send more people out.
Send more people out. So you're basically just saying they send an army out.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay, so the insurance company has their own private militia that they now send out to the Raiders' house, which they took by force from me, and they what? Kill the Raiders?
Yeah,
Okay, what's stopping them from
eventually.
taking ownership of the house?
I mean, the fact that you contracted them as a rights enforcement agency. That's
I don't
your
have anything to
obligation.
pay them.
So at that point, they could collect from the Raiders' estates.
And just
Like
keep
the
all of
Raiders
it.
obviously would have
Why would they
some
give me
form
a
of.
fucking thing?
So basically, the argument you're trying to get at is that like the rights enforcement agency would just become like a warlord,
Yes.
right? So what
Is there
happens
another
when people are
alternative?
what happens when aggression increases in an area?
When aggression increases, the strongest wins. That's Ancapistan.
No,
Might makes
no,
right.
not at all.
Yes, it is.
What happen? That's exactly what you're advocating for, and you believe in positivist legal systems. But anyways, no, because
Okay.
the demand for defense goes up, right, Alec?
The what goes up?
The demand for defense goes up. So like there's a
So
someone
everybody
going
has to have
around.
their own private militia, right?
Yes, everybody needs somebody to
Okay,
protect
so
their
everybody
rights,
has
just like
everybody
you.
has their own private militia. So what you're
Yes.
suggesting is that I have the resources just somehow already to enlist my own private militia, and then
Yeah.
I can go around and just warlord all these areas and take them over for myself. Is that correct?
No, I'm explaining this to
Wait,
you.
why
You're
not?
creating demand. You're literally creating demand for defensive services.
Yes,
And this is a terrible
militias.
business model. The
Guess
more
what? You're going to
aggression,
have a high demand for militias in Ancapistan because there's no government protection for
Gunter,
anything.
what happens for the literal millions of people in this country who the government views as enemies because of their skin color? Where do they go when the government infringes their rights every single day, Gunter? They can't go anywhere. There is no escape for people that our government does not care to protect.
That's why
In
I
this
believe in a
society,
democratically
you can.
elected government that protects all people.
Oh, yeah, because these minorities, these people of color, they get so much representation in places like Georgia and their state governments. There's so many
Yes,
laws helping them, Gunter.
yes,
No.
I also believe in protections for minorities. Yes.
Inherently, to have protections for minorities, you have to have the right to switch
Do we have
defense
protections for minorities now?
providers. No, we don't.
Yes, we
We
do.
have attempts at it. We have attempts. But at the end of the day, the
Yeah,
majority rule
attempts.
exists
Why
in
do
this
we wait? Why
country.
do we have attempts? Why do we have attempts?
Because inherently in this country, if you get 70% of people to agree on something, it happens, right?
Yes. And guess what?
Yeah,
It
that's not
happened.
right.
Okay. One time we had chattel slavery where we owned black people, and now we don't. How did that happen? It didn't happen by magic.
It happened because
Yes.
the federal government obviously had a war over it. Yeah.
Yeah. The federal and they were pressured by the slaves themselves, along with a bunch of white allies, right?
The black people, they did not have
Because
any
there are people. Because it
this
turns out
the
most
Northern
people
government.
believe in human rights.
Yeah,
Yes.
most people believe that the illegal citizens shouldn't be in the country. If you look at polling, that's obviously not correct. There's all kinds of things that most people believe in. That's a complete fallacy. It's an appeal to majority.
Okay.
So
That
what you're
depends on how
saying
you
is you want
word
to
the
live in a
poll.
majority rural country because you think that
That
most
depends on.
people will come to the right decision.
So it depends on how you word the polling, first of all. And second of all, if you were to water down, like, do you believe that every human being deserves such and such right? Most people would say, yes, they deserve the right to, let's say, healthcare, for instance. Most people believe in the right to healthcare. So, like, they would advocate for the right to health. Even if they, like, if you ask them, would you advocate for a raise in taxes? They would say no. But if you say, hey, do you believe that everybody should have healthcare at the point of entry? They would say yes, even if that would entail a raise in taxes. So, it depends on how you word the question. But I do
I
believe that
just
most
think
people believe in, the basic good things that I believe in.
for the least well off, for the people that are affected by the power structures in our society the most, there is no recourse to the state's power because there is a monopoly in rights enforcement. I mean, like look at the Black Panthers, how much they got demonized for just trying to create self-defense organizations for their own communities. I mean, the federal government went after them hard. And if
Yes.
those were white people doing the same thing, just having gun clubs and stuff, nobody would give a fuck, right? And
Yeah,
that's always going to be the case. There's going to be people in power, and there's going to be
but
people
guess
that
what else
aren't in power.
the Black Panthers are looked back upon fondly by leftists because they had very good initiatives besides just being a defensive force. They also had universal feeding programs for poor people and their kids. So like,
And
it's a matter.
know,
What?
the important thing, Alec, is all of these are voluntary by the community. I love these things. The government does not. It undermines the
Yes,
government's
voluntary
legitimacy if
by the
it can.
community. So you're agreeing with me that democratic rule is good, right?
If your definition of democratic rule is people get together voluntarily into social organizations, yes, I totally agree. That's great. That's fantastic. Do it more. But that's not how the state works. That's not how a
That is
monopoly
how.
on rights enforcement
Wait.
works.
You organize. People literally organize for elections. You know that, right? To get people elected.
I mean, kind of. I
Often
mean,
that
it
is how
doesn't
that
mean
works.
anything.
Yes, it
That
does.
doesn't. So the issue is with saying that, like, yes, there's people in society that are actively engaged, and you could say they're consensual voters. Most people, like, they really aren't actively engaged. I mean, there's a reason why they have to coerce us with
Why aren't they
weapons
actively
to
engaged?
follow laws. Because they don't care. There's too much information
So
to
why don't they
digest.
care?
Because they don't care. Do they need a Alec?
Well, why
Not
not? Wait, they
everybody's
just
going to
don't
care about
care.
the government.
What, The people just don't care about the people who rule them. That's just a thing that people do. They don't care.
It may be like you, they just think it's always going to be that way. We're always going to have a state. We're always going to
Why
have
would they think that?
taxes. Why would they think that? 'Cause they literally we are born in a society where the state controls things, where the government exists, where we live in a democracy, and
Yeah,
maybe
and you're
it's hard to
forced to
challenge those
work. You're
presumptions.
forced to work or die. So if you're forced to work or die, you're going to be a lot more focused on your work than you are on the people who rule you.
If it really was the case that that workers are being forced or exploited, and they actually felt that way genuinely, we would have had a communist revolution a long time ago.
We
Let's
have
just say that,
unions.
Alec.
Explain unions.
Explain unions.
Yeah.
What do you mean explain unions? Like unions exist.
But
People have a
clearly,
right to
workers are
unionize.
being treated so fairly. Why do they need unions?
Well, I mean, they can form unions if they want to.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they
unions are
do.
like not really a solvency for capitalism, obviously.
Of course not. They're so the goal of the capitalist is to make your citizenry as comfortable, at the least amount comfortable that you can possibly be without causing an insurgency. That's the goal.
I guess. I mean,
Yes,
that's the goal of the state. Yes, it's not
that's
the
the
goal
goal of a
capitalism.
capitalist state.
But anyways, like going back to this original point we had about this warmonger. I mean, what is the answer, Alec, if something does go wrong in this democracy and this monopoly of violence is turned against innocent people? What is their recourse? Do they just leave? Is that the argument?
If the democracy of violence is turned against people, like what, they start rolling tanks down the street? Is that what you mean?
Like in our system, like if certain groups of people are just outcasted from political power and they're oppressed, what happens to them? Where do they turn?
Well, what happened with the slave with slaves? They
What
rise up.
happened with slaves? So you're saying the solution is we have to have armed large conflicts over this?
If it comes to that, sure. I would hope it doesn't.
I mean that's exactly the issue with collectively owning something like a government, because there is no way to settle disputes when it comes down to it, except either complete majority rule or eventually violence if the minority doesn't accept the ruling.
Did you know that it would take about 10% of the entire workforce to completely shut down the economy?
Yeah, it'd probably take
Okay,
10% of
so
taxpayers
so a
to
minority,
completely
right?
shut down the IRS.
So a minority, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it would take a minority of people in order to completely radicalize how everybody lives, right? People would be in
I
favor
mean,
of workers' rights real fucking fast, wouldn't they?
maybe.
Yes.
The reality is what we're I don't even think that that's what Marxists are advocating for. It's just people being like allowed to just follow their own pursuits more. I mean, the entire agenda of Marxism is to make a new man, and it goes against nature.
Make a new
So like
man.
we,
Wait,
we
wait,
could
whoa,
say like
whoa,
short
whoa, whoa.
term.
Hold on. What do you mean, a new man? What?
Like, do you know what Marx's like end of communism theory was?
Explain it to me like I'm four.
Like, okay, so basically Marx assumes that eventually, as the dictatorship of the proletariat
Yeah.
got more and more power, that like workers would take over more and more functions in society, and the state would just kind of wither away, and we would somehow achieve post scarcity, and then we would get rid. Like one of his biggest issues was with the division of labor completely. So we would get rid of all specialization, and human consciousness and beings would just let their thoughts and desires
Specialization. I
go.
don't think that was a tenet of Marxism.
So
If it
what
was,
not
feel free to
effective?
correct me. I don't think that Marx was completely correct on everything, by the way.
I mean, I understand. I'm just saying that, like, I think when we assume that when laborers are unhappy with their conditions, I don't think they're gonna just inherently go like, yeah, we want Marxism. Like, I think most people like accept that like private property is a good thing and all these other things. So, I mean, conflating the idea that like just because people are unhappy means they're supportive of like X or Y theory of organization, like I don't think is
If
valid.
somebody's not making enough money, what are they going to want?
More money.
More money. If somebody's not, it doesn't have enough food, what are they going to want?
They're gonna want more food.
Exactly. So eventually, all roads lead back to this Marxist theory of more resources and power to the people. So
I mean,
even if they
what
don't
is
know it,
what is the foundation of Marxist theory, in your opinion?
the foundation. I'm not a Marxist expert, but I guess if I had to, if you held me at gunpoint, the foundation of Marxist, I mean, it would be the Communist Manifesto and or like das Kapital, right? Like it would be like the
You're
labor
right.
theory of value.
You're absolutely right. Labor theory of value. So, I mean, then the entire argument that Marxists have is based off labor theory of value, correct?
Sure.
So you believe value is objective?
Subjective. Yeah, that's why I said I don't completely believe in like Marxist ideology. I think that there are a lot of exceptions to be made and a lot of like I think I'm not a scholar like Marx was, but I do think that there is subjectivity that needs to be taken into account. Like, you know, if you spend 5 hours digging a hole in your backyard, that doesn't make it valuable. That just means you've spent 5 hours digging a hole in your backyard. But where are we going with this?
Well, I mean, like to Marx's credit, he agrees with you. Like only socially necessary labor would be considered to be labor under his theory. Like you guys are both kind of utilitarians in that way. But I mean, like where I'm
Okay.
going with this is that obviously we can't quantify the value of labor, and capitalism isn't a
Not
binary
always.
win-loss exchange. Like both people win in any voluntary exchange, and you're gonna say that's not voluntary. But why would I
Okay.
engage in work if I preferred the alternative,
Prefer the alternative, which is what?
which is unemployment, which is less exchange value, less resources, essentially.
Then you don't have to work. That's fine.
Great. That's all I'm saying is that
Yeah.
obviously labor isn't inherently exploitative. If it was, people just wouldn't work. They wouldn't
Okay.
value it
You and
to do it.
you and me, wake up on an island,
Okay.
and
Oh.
I wake up first. Okay, I wake up first. It's very important that I wake up first,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I see coconuts all around the island, right? And I decide I'm going to take all the coconuts and pile them up into one big pile and block them off from you. And then you wake up and you see all the coconuts piled up into one big pile. And I say, and you ask for coconuts because you're hungry. And I say,
Hmm.
oh, well, as you can see, I already gathered all the coconuts. But, all right, I am willing to give you some if you suck my dick. Is that fair?
So you're arguing not necessarily against voluntary exchange. You're presupposing that monopolies exist, which they don't. So that's kind
No,
of a
I'm just
fallacy.
asking. No, this is a very simple scenario. Is that fair or not?
Well, I mean, you're not actually disproving the point you're trying to prove. I'm saying that like that
The point
doesn't
I'm
happen.
trying,
So
no, no, no. The
monopolies
point that
exist.
I'm proving is that this system is inherently unfair. You either work or you die. You can suck my
Your
dick or you
argument,
can die of starvation, bitch. So get sucking.
your
That's my point.
your argument rests on the existence of a natural monopoly. You understand that, right, Alec?
A natural monopoly. What do you mean?
I mean, like you're presupposing that in this situation that a monopoly on all coconuts and any close substitutes for nourishment has been achieved, right?
You woke
That
up
that is
one
how.
day and Disney existed. What are you going to do about that? You going to overtake Disney?
What did you say, Alec? You cut
You
out.
woke up
Mm.
one day and Disney just existed. They already existed, right? We can agree on that? You just
What does
woke
this
up and
mean?
Disney was there.
Yeah.
And there is shit all that you can do about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is exactly what I mean. The coconut analogy. You can
That's
either
completely
work.
different. Disney's
That's
not
not
trying to make
different
you
at
suck
all.
their dick. It
Huh?
is completely different. They don't have a monopoly on anything.
What are you talking? They have a huge monopoly on media.
Can you define monopoly? I guess we have different
It doesn't
terms.
even matter if it's a monopoly, by the way. They have a fuck ton of resources that you don't. And you're just fine with that.
Okay. I don't want any of them, and we're not talking about any kind of
You don't want their
exchange. So
money?
that's
You don't want like
confusing.
enough money that you don't have to work anymore?
What are you exactly arguing? Like, I'm
What I'm
very confused
arguing
right
is
now. I'm
that
not
one day
following.
you just literally woke up and Disney existed. Okay?
Okay.
Which means that you didn't have any opportunity like that Disney had. But they already have control over all these different forms of media. If you want to go even further, we can say Walmart existed, and so they have control over very basic necessities that you now have to work and pay for at their discretion. Okay? If you were told by Walmart tomorrow, suck my dick or you don't eat, you're going to suck their dick so that you can eat.
Yeah, if it was a monopoly, I would, but monopolies
Yes.
don't actually naturally arrive.
No, no, no.
So
It's not even
this
just a
is
matter of there being a
completely.
monopoly. It's a matter of there being corporate interest. Okay?
I
You
think,
work or you die.
Alec, you're conflating monopolies
You work or you
with
die, yes or no?
voluntary exchange.
In our current
Yes,
society, you
that
work or
is
you die. Yes,
the
okay.
fact of
So you work
nature.
or you die. So do you have a choice that you whether to work?
Yes, you always have a choice
Okay,
not to
so
work.
then you have a choice whether or not to suck my dick on Coconut Island, right? You have a
I don't
choice.
think
You can die.
your example doesn't prove the point, Alec, because
Yes, it does. This
it's
proves my point
presupposing
perfectly.
monopoly.
You would suck my dick so that you don't die, right? Or die. That's
Yes,
fine. And
that's
that's your choice.
praxeology.
And that's
But
your
that
choice.
doesn't.
That's a choice. The free choice that you have, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm making that decision on my own.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So you
So
chose
we
to suck
agree.
my dick, right? That was your
So
free
then we
will.
both agree that slavery is a choice too, by the way, Alec.
Oh yeah, that's the first thing you came here for. Slavery is a choice. No, slavery is not a choice. That's stupid.
Wait. You just said it was a choice that you took everything I need to survive and are asking me to suck your dick.
I'm saying it's not a choice. I'm saying the choice is not even there. You work or you die is not a real choice. That's a fake choice.
Wait,
Forced
how's that
upon
a
you by your
fictional
betters, and you just gobble that up. I
forced,
don't.
forced upon me?
Yes.
Wait, what? I mean, okay, imagine you woke up on the Coconut Island and you chose not to work. What would happen to you?
I chose not. What do you mean I chose not to work?
You chose not to perform any labor. You just sat there on the beach. You watched the sun. That
Do
sounds
I have
wonderful,
coconuts
doesn't it,
available to
Gunter?
me that I can just go pick off of a tree and break open and eat?
That is work, Alec. You are
Yes,
working
it is in fact work to open my mouth and chew the food. Good job, man.
and
What's your
picking the
point?
coconut. You are taking
Yes,
from
it's
nature.
work
You're
to walk to.
transforming it.
Yes, it is in fact work, labor, to walk to
Oh,
my
okay.
fridge and get a slice of pizza. You're right. What's your point?
So then we totally agree then that yes, you do
We're
indeed in
talking
a
about
scarce
work on two
world.
totally different scales here, man. You're being pedantic.
Wait, wait, I'm not though, because
Yes,
I
you
don't.
are.
I have no issue like in my society if you just want a homestead
I
like
do
a
in fact
little
have to chew
patch
the
in the
food. There's
woods.
not going to be a mother bird to do it for me. You're right. Good job. What's your
Yeah,
point?
I'm just saying like in my society, I'm not saying you would have to perform a 9 to 5 job. Like you could just homestead some land and just farm on it, and
Homestead it. What if
we'd
I
be.
what? Okay, so we go back to the Raider scenario. What if I just take yours that you homesteaded?
Oh my God, Alec.
Seriously, no. Answer the question. What if I just take it? You said you can file an claim with your insurance company, but I'm telling you that the insurance denied you. Is that not a
I'm
thing that
telling you
insurance
that
companies do?
there is always a possibility that there's nobody to enforce your rights. That happens in any government system. But in a privatized one, there's an incentive to profit and to collecting damages
Yeah, and the most
for
profit
private
you're going to make
actors
as
to
an
enforce your
insurance
rights.
company is to deny claims.
Well,
That's not
why? Why would
that's
I
not a
deny
little
a
known
claim?
fact. They deny most
Wait.
claims.
Yeah,
What?
that happens right now. I'm
Yeah.
saying like in this example, we were talking about right now, insurance companies don't actually settle disputes like this, right? Obviously. So I don't understand how it's
What are you talking
relevant.
about?
But like, okay, if somebody
Have you
breaks
ever
into
been
your
denied a
house,
claim?
no, I have not been. If
No.
someone breaks into your
I
house,
have.
Alec, and
What's your insurance? I envy you. Seriously, like I've been denied claims before. Most people have.
okay, well, I mean, I'm like 20, so I don't have insurance.
Okay.
That's fine.
Well, okay. Well, there you go. When you get insurance, you'll learn. I'm 28, man.
I'm great. I understand. Like people get denied
Okay.
claims all the time. It's terrible. But what I'm
Right.
saying is that right now, if someone breaks into your house, your insurance agency doesn't stand to gain anything from that person. Am I wrong? Like, is there any incentive for my
They've
insurance
been
agency to
gaining
care?
from me. They've been gaining from me. Okay. They take my money all the time, every month.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. And
homeowners
then
insurance.
you pay them because they provide you insurance when things go wrong. So you should
Yeah,
probably
and then
change
they
your
deny
insurance
my
company.
claims. What's stopping them
A,
from
a
denying
long
my claims? What's stopping them?
a long time ago, there used to be organizations in society called mutual aid societies, and they used to perform like insurance agencies, and they were made up of people in communities and did a much better job doing things. I wonder what
Okay.
happened to those, Alec.
I don't know. I don't know anything about this.
They got legislated out of existence. I mean, these were leftist
Okay, that's
organizations
bad.
for the most
I'll
part.
bet you that a
Yes,
conservative legislation did that, didn't they?
yeah, probably. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't really care. I don't like
I
conservatives.
think that's bad. I think the government is capable of doing bad things. I
Yes.
never said
So
that.
I'm just explaining to you that there is alternatives, and the government obviously, like maybe the way we perceive things, it has to be corporate. But no, for most of human history, especially in immigrant or like marginalized communities, people found answers and solutions within their own groups,
Okay,
and
well,
that's great.
humanity started as its own group and we developed capitalism. And I don't like capitalism, so clearly something went wrong somewhere. We have a better understanding of how like communities work now that we've developed like, proper frontal cortexes or whatever. So like
Mhm.
I think that we should use that brain power to establish a better society, don't you?
I mean,
A more
I think
equitable
one of the
society.
do we agree that capitalism and I don't even believe in intellectual property. But like, could we agree that these things do incentivize technological development?
That capitalism does?
Yeah, and like
Hell
incentives
no.
for profit.
Hell no.
No, no, you don't believe that these concepts incentivize
What makes you more
technology?
money? What makes you more money? Developing, putting forward money into all of the research and resources that it would require to develop a new type of technology, or just copycatting the technology?
I mean, the reason why we have intellectual property protections is so you can have a monopoly on the technology for a set period of time. And that's why we see in the United States, we have the most patents per capita in the world because we have such
But
a terrible intellectual
but
property
you haven't
system.
answered my question. Which one makes you more money?
I'm explaining to you that that's not how it works in the real world. And like, yeah, you make
But
more
but I'm
money when
asking
you invent
you,
things.
devoid of all, like, we live in Ancapistan. There's no government to stop me from copying
So
you. Like, let's say that
I'm
you
just
develop a new
saying,
cancer treatment. Let's say that you develop a new cancer treatment, and I copycat that and sell it for cheaper. What stopped me from
yeah,
doing that?
in that world, there's nothing stopping you, and that's great because
Exactly.
you shouldn't be stopped. But I mean, when we're talking about capitalism in the
I think it
real
should be
world, like
free.
I understand that you don't like capitalism in the real world, but like intellectual property does encourage growth with technology, right?
No,
No,
no, it does not. I
really.
think that
So
people,
why
I
does
think
the
that
United States have more
people,
patents?
people innovate on their own. They don't need a monetary incentive to innovate.
Yeah, some people
Monetary
do, but why
incentive
does the
comes. The monetary incentive is
Yeah.
to copycat.
If this is true, then why does the United States have the most patents in the world per capita?
Most patents.
Yeah.
Doesn't a patent protect
Why
you from
do,
other people copying you?
yeah. That's an incentive, is that you
Okay,
have a
but
monopoly on
in
copy.
Kapistan, there's no patents then because there's no government to
No,
stop people
no,
from copying you.
I understand. I don't even like patents, Alec, but like I think a
Okay,
lot of capitalists do, and the system we have now is a form of capitalism, right?
it is capitalism. Yes.
Right. And capitalism in its current form, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with everything that goes on in our society, but I mean, like we do have intellectual property protections, right?
Yes. And I think
And
in
that
many
does
ways that's
encourage
good and it can be
innovation, right?
abused. Huh?
Yeah, totally. Like, there's no right to intellectual property. It's just an idea. I agree with you. But I mean,
Sure.
like they do exist, and they do encourage like inventions, right?
The intellectual, sorry, intellectual, sorry, intellectual property safeguards encourage innovations. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Or sorry, innovations.
yeah.
I think it can. I think it's I think that it is a band-aid solution to what it could very simply be just, abolish monetary incentives.
I mean, I totally agree. I don't like it, but I'm just saying, like in capitalistic society, the way it is arranged now, we have it, and it encourages innovation. I think that's a pretty
Right, but
simple
you're an
point.
ANCAP, so you like that to some extent. You like it
I
better than
like
my version.
intellectual property. I don't.
No,
Intellectual
I'm not saying you
property,
like
property
intellectual
has to
property.
be.
I'm saying that you like the fact that we have to like safeguard people from being copycats. Like that's a better system
No,
to you than just taking away the monetary incentive. Because if there's no
I
monetary incentive to copycat, then people won't copycat. There's no reason to.
I mean, it is an incentive for people to innovate. I don't like it. I think consequentially though, like it does provide more innovation. So I mean, what I'm saying is like obviously if capitalism accelerates technological development the way that it's arranged now, I mean, if we were to achieve post scarcity, I think it would have to be through
We
capitalism.
are
Like
in
we would
post
have to.
scarcity. We
We're
are.
not, Alec.
Yes,
If
we are,
everyone quit
dude. Come on.
working,
Do we have to look up the stats?
okay, so you're saying that like, oh, people don't need to work 9 to 5 jobs, like maybe, I
Yes.
guess. But like, yeah, you still have to work. We don't have the
Yes, I
automation
do
that
in
humans
fact have
can.
to get up and go to my fridge to get the food. You're right.
Somebody has to grow the food. We don't have robots yet that can do everything for us.
I have to grill the food. You're right. Anything
Yeah.
else?
So you have to grow the food, you have to bake the bread, you have to do all these
Yes.
different things.
Yes.
Theoretically, you
Or
wouldn't actually want to do everything. You would trade with other people, right?
yeah, you're right. I wouldn't
So
want to do
like,
everything. I would want somebody to do some things for me because I'm not capable of doing everything by myself. You're right. And that's
true,
why
true.
I believe in a socialist society where people are incentivized to do those things. Guess what? There's going to be somebody who likes cooking. You ever met somebody who likes cooking? They make great food.
Sure.
And they should be incentivized to make that. They should be rewarded for making that. That's great.
Yeah, that's what
Same with art.
that's what prices do. That's why good bakers make more money.
That's not always the case. If you start a small baking business, you can be eaten up by a gigantic corporation like Walmart. They can just buy you out.
Wait, what?
If you are a good baker,
why would they have an interest in buying
like
out
doing?
like a small artisan
What's your
bake
passion?
shop?
What's your passion? What do you like doing?
It's my passion. I mean, I'm an economics student, so.
An economics student. Is there anything that you like doing in your free time?
Is there anything I like doing in my free time?
Yeah, what
I
do you like
mean,
doing?
I live in a society. I'm in a stage of my life where I have to work basically all the time. I like playing basketball. That's about it.
You like playing basketball?
Yeah.
Okay. What's stopping you from becoming a pro basketball player and playing for fun?
Because
Like
the
just for
value
money?
of me playing basketball is well below the minimum wage. That's why.
Right. So what if you just could live and play basketball? Wouldn't that be a better
can.
life?
I mean, I don't know.
No,
I would have a
no.
lot.
You're not. You say you're an economics major. I'm telling you, you don't have to work a job. You just play basketball. That's your thing.
I mean, it would be better for me personally, but if everybody viewed it that way, I mean, at the end of the day, I understand you think I'm being pedantic, but like there is jobs in society that have to be done, and you're saying you can be incentivized. I agree, but I think
Okay.
the
Okay.
incentivization
So
comes
imagine
down to
this.
currency.
Imagine this. You have the bare minimum. You have a house. You have food. You have water. You have a bed to sleep in. You have a pot to shit in. Okay. You have all that good stuff, and you play basketball. One day, you see an ad. Sewers must be cleaned. Bonus incentive of whatever, $10,000. You take it?
I don't even know what money would mean at that point. Like we'd have so much provided to us.
Good point.
Like, I can't. What, Alec?
We can only think in terms of money. Like I'm not even capable of thinking outside of the terms of money right now. Like I don't know what that society would look like. But there are incentive. My point is, there's an incentive structure in place for people to go and do these jobs that other people wouldn't otherwise normally do.
Okay, so
I think that's
about
better
food.
than threatening their livelihood.
So think about food, water, all these other things, right? So these are pretty high priorities for humans, is having needs for survival. Those are higher.
Yeah, so let's hold them over
preference, right?
people's heads so that they do what we want, right?
No, wait. So let's say that all of these are met. So then as we go down the list of priorities, then we get to things like social well-being, like cleanliness in the communities, like all these things that we both care about, right? But they're lower on the list than needs, than necessities. So the opportunity cost of me not doing these things is like a lot lower. Like I would rather like value wants a lot more than these things, like compared to them. Like if I just go play basketball all day, like I'm obviously gonna prefer that.
Do you like going on vacation?
Not particularly, no.
No. What do you like doing besides basketball that you don't get to normally do? Where do you like to go?
I like running.
You like running?
Thing.
Where do you like to go? Do you like to travel anywhere? Do you like to do anything expensive anytime?
I enjoy my public parks.
Your public parks. Okay, so you just get a public park. You know that, right? Like under like right now, actually, you just get a public park, which is funny for somebody who claims to be an ANCAP, because public parks wouldn't exist for you. But anyway, let's say
I would still have a right to them, actually. So
okay, let's say that you get a trip to Yellowstone National Park, all expenses paid.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you work for that?
Would I work for that?
Yeah, just a little bit of work, like 5 hours.
I mean, I may. It's a lot less likely I'd work for that than like feeding myself, though. That's all I'm saying. Is it's lowering your preference.
But that's because you have to eat to live, man. You're literally like, yeah, I have to work in order to survive, and I'm fine with that. The boot is pressing into your skull and cracking it, and you're just like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, because that's nature. Like, what animals do you?
What do you mean that's nature? No, come on, we're humans, man. We're better than that.
Your issue is with scarcity, Alec. It's not with capitalism.
Okay, the fundamental difference here is that you don't think that we live in a post-scarcity society, and I can prove to you that we do. Would you like me to?
Okay, if you want to prove, what does scarcity mean to you, first of all?
That we don't have enough food and water for everybody to survive, or basic necessities, I should say, such as food and water, for everybody to survive. That's scare
I
stuff.
would say that like you could centrally plan and like communist that kind of stuff up for the most part. I would agree with that. But like there's so much more to life than just like necessities.
That's what I'm
And there's so many
saying.
more
That's what.
efficient
But
ways
that's
to
exactly
provide
my point. Wait,
necessities.
wait, wait. Hold on. That's my point. So there's way more to life than just necessities. So what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
you get your basic necessities free of charge. Period. End of story. You get your basic necessities. But as you just said, there's more to life than just basic necessities, my friend. So what do? You incentivize people to do more work so that they don't have to just subsist off of basic necessities. Make sense?
Uh, I mean, I see what you're saying, but it's
Yes.
just not it's not what happens in economies like that.
What do you mean economies like that? Like a socialist one?
Yeah, I mean, socialist economies, when you don't have price signals, like I was trying to explain to you before we just started rambling about warlords, like you can't make decisions that are socially needed easily.
Such as.
Like if I owned a plot of lands and I had like four options, I can make a housing development, I can make like a computer development firm, I can make a park. Like
Unless raiders
all
come and
these
take
things.
it, which
What?
is what happens in Ancapistan.
I'm trying to demonstrate to you like why you need price signals. I understand that like you might have concerns about how this is protected, but like
So
the,
you're
the
an
way that
ANCAP,
it's
right?
allocated is by
Okay,
price.
okay, okay.
Like
Let me ask you this. You're an ANCAP, right?
yeah, yeah. So
How is society structured?
all is society structure. There's people that have certain rights, and then there's everybody else that doesn't have those rights. That's what it is.
What are you talking about? What rights? What rights would
There's
you have
people
that
like
I don't?
there's people like police and road pirates and politicians that are completely on a different plane of existence than we are right now. And we, like Alec, we function for the most part like we don't aggress on other people. We don't steal from other people. We have the same rights, and that's great. But these other people, they think that because of their positions, because they're elected, quote unquote, they have a right to do these things, and
Right. So
that's
my
the
question
issue.
is, my question is not how society is currently set up. How do you set it up?
How do I set it up?
Yes.
People get to choose, completely voluntary.
Voluntary, as in what?
I mean, there's plenty of anarcho-capitalists or like libertarians or even anarcho-syndicalists and left-wingers that like acknowledge that states might arise, but like people should have to sign an explicit contract instead of this like social contract thing that's implicit.
Who
We
enforces
should
this
have to
contract?
who enforces this contract.
Who enforces it? Like what? Like, give me an example of a contract.
Like let's say like like Adam wants to live in a community. So
Okay.
everybody in this community has kind of like made this contract up that says like you have to cut your grass like once a month. You can't steal. You can't lie. All these things, whatever they choose,
How
and then
big's the
they make Adam
community?
sign it.
How big's the
Well,
community?
what is the community?
How big is the community?
I don't know. It could be a couple hundred. It could be a couple thousand. It could be millions. I guess.
Couple hundred. Would this work on a scale of like, let's say, a dozen people?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So a dozen people are living. You want to go there, but you're told you have to sign this contract in order to live there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I pull out my gun. I'm Adam. I pull out my gun and I say, no, I don't. I own this place now. Now what?
Okay. I mean, at that point, you're being aggressive, and they can defend
Yes.
themselves. So
They
they'll
can
probably
defend
shoot you.
themselves. Okay. I shoot them. Now they
Yeah.
can't.
So, but what we're saying is that no matter what we attempt to do in the world, there's going to be people that aggress on
Just
others, and
follow me
that's
for a
just
second.
nature.
Just follow the scenario. Just play along with me,
Oh,
okay?
okay,
I
okay,
shoot them. I shoot all 12 people. Do I own the
You
place
shoot
now?
up, bro. No.
What do you mean no? Who's going to stop me?
There's only two ways to legitimately own something: is through appropriation or voluntary exchange. It's
What do you mean
obvious.
legitimate? I own it now.
Okay, you can claim that you own something.
I do.
What is the
I
point
killed
of
everybody
ownership?
here and now I own it.
What is ownership, Alec?
Ownership is when I say I own something. I killed everybody here and now I own the land.
Ownership is when you say you own something.
Yes. Who's going to stop
So
me? Who's going to stop me?
I own you. I own you. I now legitimately own you because I said so.
If you hold me at gunpoint and there's nobody else to say that you don't own me, probably, yeah.
It's a terrible way of doing things.
Yes, it
Well,
is, isn't
honestly,
it? It is a terrible way of doing things, isn't it?
what is the point of ownership though? Like, what is the point
Good
of
point. Good
ownership?
question.
Yeah, yeah. Great
Who's
question,
enforcing
Alec.
the
What do you
ownership?
think? What do you think ownership is?
Follow my scenario. I kill all 12 people there. Now do I own the land?
I don't. I'm trying to establish what you even think ownership is.
Okay, I'm getting to that. Do I own the land or not? That's my question.
No, you
Who's
don't. I
stopping
already
me?
told you.
Who stops me from owning the land? Who stops me?
I, I don't have to provide an enforcer to say that you don't own that land. It's obvious. Like if you
I don't
murder
have to
someone,
provide an
it's like,
enforcer. I
who's
own it.
gonna
I said
stop
that I
you from
killed everybody
killing
here.
them?
What's stopping me?
Not. I mean, in this case, nothing is stopping you from
Yes,
saying that.
so
It
I
doesn't
own
mean
it.
you actually own
So
it.
I own it. You gonna tell me I don't?
You can say you own it. That's not the point of ownership,
Yes.
bro.
Okay, you come in and you say you don't own this land. Now what?
I have a right to remove you from it.
You have the
You
right to
did kill
remove me. How are you gonna
people.
do that?
You've shown through your actions that you do not believe people have a right to bodily autonomy
Okay, so
because you murdered.
you come in,
Yeah,
and you say you
I
don't own
kill
this
you.
land, and I say yes I do, and you say no you don't, and then you try to remove me. How do you go about removing me from the land? Go ahead.
I threaten you with force.
You threaten me with force, such as
I point a gun at you.
you point a gun at me. I pull out my gun. Now we're both facing each other with guns drawn.
Great.
Okay? Do you shoot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, you shoot. Okay, so you
Yeah.
shoot me. Good. Now I'm dead.
Great.
Now what?
I don't own the land.
Now you own the land?
I don't. I don't.
You
That's not
don't
how
own.
that
Okay,
works.
who owns it?
Obviously, whatever like the closest relatives or like however like the social norms are in that area.
Okay, so you give it to their
They
closest
come from.
relatives. How do you decide
Yeah.
that?
How do I decide who someone's closest relatives
Yeah,
are?
go find them. How do you find them?
How do I find them? Obviously, these people don't
Yeah.
exist in a vacuum. Like, there's gonna be people in the surrounding area who know who they are. Like, I would
Okay.
probably ask, like, "Oh, have you seen
I've
like does
shot all of
Bob
their
have any
family
family?"
members. I've shot all of their immediate family members. They showed up looking for the people
Great.
who are dead,
So
and I shot them.
when we apply this level of absurdity to any situation, like
This is not
it
absurd,
doesn't
man.
get
This is
it.
your
That is
worldview.
absurd.
No, it's
You're saying
not.
one individual
So
comes
all
into
you're
a town
saying
and
is
kills
that whoever
everybody.
has the biggest gun wins. That's your worldview.
You're the one saying that. I'm not. I
No,
don't
you
believe
said.
that means
Okay,
anything.
you are saying that. That's what Incapistan is.
It is a fact of like of existence that people with more power often subjugate others and do terrible things. That
And
doesn't
I'm
mean
saying we should mitigate that. And you're saying we should enforce that.
yes. And your answer to that mitigation is by giving people a monopoly on violence. That's not a
No,
solution.
giving people a monopoly on resources.
Okay, I don't.
Because
We
people who
haven't
have what
even
they need to
established
survive, I got a
what is a
little
monopoly.
something to tell you. People who have what they need to survive do not commit violence nearly as often. They might, but they don't do it nearly
Yeah.
as often. This is
Okay.
statistically backed.
Okay, but what is a monopoly? Because we're going back to this again. We still haven't defined it.
It's complete ownership over a certain resource. So if we have a
What do you mean by?
monopoly of the proletariat or a monopoly of the people or whatever you want to call it, that means that it's collectively owned, and I'm fine with that. That's good.
Where did the term monopoly come from?
I don't know.
It came
board
from
game?
like the 15th century in reference to crown protections for like crony businesses, right? Like they've always been created by the government.
Okay.
So I guess you like monopolies because they're created by the government, huh?
I like when monopolies are controlled by the majority. Yes.
And I mean, like obviously, like you still haven't been able to answer this. What happens when there's a monopoly on force? What happens to the minority?
If the majority has the
they're-
monopoly of force, then
Okay.
that's. I mean, what would you prefer? That the minority have the monopoly of force?
I would prefer, like almost anybody, that there isn't monopolies because monopolies are bad and inefficient, and there's
Okay.
no recourse for consumers.
How do
Obviously,
you have not a monopoly of the like? How do you have not a monopoly if you don't consider like a monopoly of the collective a monopoly? Or if you do consider that a monopoly, sorry.
I mean, like you have different rights enforcement agencies. Like I think that like
But
the
then
Black
they have the
Panthers
monopoly of
self-defense
force. How do they enforce their rule?
with weapons. That's how
With
you
weapons?
enforce
Okay, so
that.
they have the monopoly of force then.
No.
No? How not?
Okay, if I'm living in Illinois and I have the choice between four different individual rights protection agencies. Is there a monopoly in rights protection?
4 different agencies.
Yeah.
Are they at war with each other?
Why would they be? That'd be a really shitty rights defense agency if
Okay,
they
so they're
can't
not at
settle
war with each
disputes.
other, so therefore they all agree with each other, so therefore they have the monopoly of force. Collectively. Among themselves. Right?
That's not monopoly. That's a cartel.
But this is just a monopoly with extra steps.
It's a monopoly with recourse. Like if one of these rights protection
What's the
agencies,
recourse? What's the recourse? Go
let's
ahead.
say like I'm African American, I'm living in Illinois, and my rights
Hmm.
protection agency is proven to respond to my calls like 10 minutes later. Or they spend like a lot of time like treating me like shit, like the police do. Like I could say, well, I don't want to work with you anymore, and I could just go sign up with a different agency that values me more and provides me better service.
What's their incentive to do that?
The person being shit on by this company.
No, no, no. What's the incentive of the other company to do that?
All right, like let's say I'm a business provider. I'm selling a service. I obviously want to provide a good service so people buy it.
No, you want to make money.
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yes, you want. No, you
There's
said I
different
want to provide a
incentives
good
there,
service.
Alec.
There's a difference between wanting to provide a good service and to make money. I can provide a shit service as long as I make money, right?
Well, let's think about this critically. People really love the Arizona tea guy, right? Like he could probably be selling his tea for a more expensive price, but he doesn't really care because there's other valuations. Like he likes that people
He
enjoy his product.
personally doesn't, but most people do. Most business owners do. That's why they price jack.
I would agree, like it's in some
Yes.
areas, but like obviously there's people that would be involved in rights enforcement that don't have any profit motive. Like the Black Panthers weren't making any money off of forming these
Wait, there
organizations,
are
were they?
people involved. Wait, wait, wait. There are people involved in rights enforcement that don't have any profit motive. How does this work in Ancapistan?
Maybe these people like have other jobs or they live in a co-op or some other system where they have some free time and they can like rotate. Like
You
let's
keep
say like
saying
one day a
co-op.
week.
It just sounds like you're a left-wing anarchist.
I mean, I think you have to understand that like ANCAPs, we don't have any preference on how people choose to organize. That's the thing. Like the reason
Right,
why I'm not at
but what
ANCOM is I
happens?
don't have
Okay, but what happens without like an overarching system of protection is that somebody comes in and dismantles like the smaller groups. Like that's always what happens. It turns into feudalism every time.
turns into feudalism.
Yes.
I mean, first of all, I think this assumption that feudalism is bad is kind of unfounded. It's
Wait,
a lot
you
more
think
efficient.
feudalism's good?
I mean, if you look at like graphs of like violent deaths per capita and like you chart it back like into the Middle Ages, it's actually a lot lower because feudal lords like they didn't have the ability and the means to wage like total war like states do. I mean, what we saw in the 20th century with these conflicts was the state coming into its true form. I mean,
I would
that is
rather
something
have
only
a
state can do.
I would rather have a democratically elected state who has the monopoly of power than a feudal lord who has the monopoly of, or not even the monopoly of power, just like several feudal lords who are all skirmishing for power. Do you know what it was like to live during the feudal days?
Well, very few people do because peasants didn't really
But
record
do
things.
you?
So, I mean, I've taken some classes on medieval history. I mean, we don't really
It
know
was
what it
bad,
was like
right?
for
We can
average
agree it was
people.
bad.
In
We
certain
don't have to get
ways,
into the
yeah.
specific. Okay, feudalism's bad, right?
In certain ways. I mean, as a
In
government
certain
system,
ways,
I don't think
such
it's
as
particularly bad.
certain ways, like what?
Such as like you couldn't be like a minority religious, like a minority religion in most places. Like,
Such as if you get into a
um,
skirmish with another feudal lord, you die. You just or get permanently injured. That's what happens.
uh, let's think about the incentives for in like if you're the president of a democracy, you're just in charge of the country for 4 years, and then you move on, right? Like you don't own the country, obviously. You just are a steward. So do you really care if the country gets shit on in a conflict? Not really. But if I own a country, I'm probably not going to want to go to war because I am directly affected by losing my things. Like these are my possessions. I have an
But
incentive
this
to
is
take
such a
care of them.
shallow way of viewing humanity, man.
But it's
The
true,
country's a
Alex. Like
possession. Are the people
look
possessions
at
too?
look at the charts. Like there was less violence in the feudal period because they had an incentive not to waste things that they felt that they owned. I'm not saying this is a good system of
Would
government.
you have wanted to live in the feudal era? Would you?
Would I have wanted?
Or
I
would you
mean,
rather
I'm
live
an
in our
individual
current
in my
era?
situation.
I'm just curious.
I mean, I would rather live in our current era with
Okay.
like a feudalistic government structure because there was actually a decentralization of power. There wasn't a monopoly of violence. There was no states. Like we had peasants, they had their
So you
own
get
courts.
drafted by your feudal lord. You get drafted. You say, "Hey, we're going to war." They say, "We're going to war with another feudal state." You're drafted.
That generally didn't happen very much, actually.
But it
For the
could,
most
right?
part,
But it could.
I mean, it could in
Yeah.
some instances.
Yeah. So at any point, your feudal lord could say you're drafted.
I mean, any point my government can say that.
They
At
sure
least the feudal
can
lord
because they have
isn't
a monopoly
pretending
of
like they
power.
have
You're
a.
right. I am against the draft. But here's the beautiful part: we live in a democratic state. So I'm going to elect people who would not enforce a draft.
That's great. There's plenty of democracies that love drafts. Look at South Korea. They're a democracy. The people there think
Sure,
a
I'm
draft
going
is
to
a
elect
great
people who don't like drafts.
civil
I think that
function.
that's more feasible under democracy than a feudal dictatorship.
I think it's completely absurd that we just pretend that the majority will magically come to the correct opinion all the time,
As
and
opposed to
that
an
we just
individual,
happen to
right?
agree with it.
As opposed to an individual.
I think when an individual makes decisions for themselves, it matters a lot less if they're correct. That's pretty
What?
intuitive. Like if I have a family and I say like, you know what, we don't need to eat anymore. Like that's obviously a lot worse if I just say I don't need to eat anymore. You know?
Hold on, I'm confused where you're going with this. What?
I'm saying I don't really like I think that people make bad decisions all the time. But it's a lot worse
Yes.
to make decisions for other people and they turn out to be bad.
It's a lot worse to make decisions for other people. And they,
Yeah.
no, it's a democratic decision. We all make a unifying decision for ourselves. And if most of us don't want to go to war or be drafted, then we're going to democratically decide that we don't go to war or be drafted. And if we elect
All
a
right, what
leader, if we
happens?
democratically elect a leader that says, "I will not draft you," and then he tries to draft people, I think that we should be able to kick him out.
What I mean, I'm glad that we both agree that war is bad. But like that's not always the case.
That's
There's
not my
plenty of
point. My
people that
point is you can be drafted at the drop of a hat in a feudal dictatorship.
you can
Do
be
you
in a
or do you not
democracy.
acknowledge that?
Do I or do I not? I mean, we have empirical evidence that conflict
Let me
is a
ask you
lot less
this.
common.
Are you more likely to be drafted in a feudal dictatorship or are you more likely to be drafted in a democratic society?
Probably more likely in a democratic society.
So the people vote for a leader who wants to draft people for war. That's what you believe?
I mean, people vote like we already talked about this, but there's so many different policies and laws that a government decides on. Most people only vote on a couple of issues, Alec.
I
So
understand
I mean,
that. But if you were
yeah,
let's say it's a policy prescription, like it's a policy issue. Like the policy is like the entire United States is voting. Do you believe the draft should be implemented? Yes or no? There's a very simple checkbox. Yes or no? Do you think most people are going to say yes or most people are going to say no?
I don't understand why we would want to form a government that just appeals to the majority. That's an obvious fallacy.
I'm just
So I
asking
mean,
you questions. Is
I
it
think
yes or no?
right
Do most
now
people want the draft or not?
most people would say right now probably not.
Okay. So, do you think that a person who is a dictator, right,
Hmm.
who can enforce a draft upon their own will and whim, who doesn't have to fight themselves, is more likely to enforce a draft than a democratically elected government?
Well, I mean, it just didn't happen in the Middle Ages. So I mean, we can speculate all we
It
want,
happened
but we
all the
have
time in the
empirical.
Middle Ages. What are you talking about?
Like they would levy like troops.
The Middle
Yes.
Ages were fucking garbage to live in. Why would you want to live there?
Wait. I said very clearly my only claim was there's less conflict in the Middle Ages. I didn't say that like it was a
I
great place
don't
to
even
live
think
or
that's
that was
true. If you
ridiculous.
can provide me data on that, I
There
would
was.
love to see it.
Okay. Pull it up for you.
Oh, you pull that up. I'm going to go to the bathroom again. Sorry, I got a small bladder.
All right.
I'll be right back, guys. Okay, I'm back. You still pulling up that data?
Yeah, I'm still looking for it.
Okay, take your time. I'm very interested. Like seriously, I'm not being sarcastic. Like if that is true, I'd like to know the details. I just don't feel like, in all honesty, that even if that is true, that's by happenstance. Like it's. I don't think that a feudal dictatorship would see more peaceful results than a democratic one. My only assumption can be like if that is somehow true by the numbers, that it's like a per capita thing.
Um, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like it's not really like the smoking gun, really, but it is strictly per capita sort of true. I'll send you the link in chat.
Okay, but like, so what are you saying, that you want to live in a feudal dictatorship?
No, 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 no. I'm just saying that like democracy is because people can actually identify with their government a lot more, because the government has a lot more like a lot more power and size than like traditional monarchies had, is that they're a lot more capable of waging war and justifying it.
Sure, but it's a matter of how much power we allow them to have rather than like the way that the power is attained. And what I'm saying is like right now, I agree with you. I will cede you that governments right now have way more power than they used to in terms of pure military force. Like we have the nuke, right? But like in terms of how that's in terms of democracy, right? The United States is like we don't have a draft right now. But if you live in a feudal dictatorship, there is a draft. At any point, they can just snap their fingers and go, "You're going to war," and I don't like that. And I don't think you like that
Well,
either. I'm not saying you like that, but
yeah.
that is the reality of a feudal dictatorship.
So I sent you the demographic. This accounts for like per capita.
Okay,
As you can see, let me make sure I get the dates right.
sure.
Around the 1600s, we start seeing a big spike in overall death rate, and then we start seeing it going up and down a lot more. And generally, most historians accept that's when the state kind of became a thing. Like centralized banks started developing, like centralized taxation started developing. The state started beginning entering into different areas of social and political life. And we can see like from that point going forward, like there is like moments where it is comparable to the pre like 1600s pre widespread states level of conflicts, but we can still see like obviously like even when we take out outliers like the First and Second World War, which I mean obviously those are kind of just very big examples of this, but I mean you can still see the trend is that there is more and bigger conflict per capita with the states.
Okay. Well, according to this, we're living in the most peaceful time in human history right now.
I'm totally aware. Like right now, part of that is that we have all these defense structures in place, and like obviously it's kind of a one power world with the United States. But that's not going to be forever. There's going to be a big conflict at some point.
This is a matter of military might, though. Like we just have the capability to kill more people. But like back then,
Um,
we were still killing people, and like the deaths were more brutal, and like it wasn't good back then either. Like you know, just because fewer people died, military
I
plus
mean,
civilian death rate.
well, one of the big reasons why we moved away from feudalism is that the state, because of its size and the fact it could exist in such a coercive manner, was able to fund weapons that like these smaller kingdoms couldn't fund. So like at that time, it would be like they might have cannons that the lords wouldn't be able to stop, and this would stop their walls, and it would basically make it so state they established a monopoly of violence because they were able to levy more resources in the way of forcing people to do things basically. And if you have smaller communities, like obviously a lot of small countries like Switzerland could never make a nuclear weapon.
So what you're
So I
saying
mean,
is, so you're arguing in favor of smaller, spread out communities that can't monopolize power.
I think like that is the theory that a lot of anarcho-capitalists espouse. I mean, we're so far away from it that obviously that's a very long-term goal.
But that's
But
never going to happen.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we all have values and goals, right? I mean, the important part about being any like somebody that actually wants to change anything or has political opinions is you have to actually care about them, right? And like have long-term goals. I think that's pretty important.
But that's simply not going to, like, I don't understand why you would want us like smaller, more spread out communities when you could just have one large community with people who all agree with each other on most things. Like, I don't understand.
Because small government's more responsive, you probably actually have a higher chance of knowing the people that are making decisions on your behalf. Obviously, there's a lot of regional differences between areas of the United States, and sending everybody to Washington and sort it out there, it doesn't work.
So why can't I
So
just
there's
make
people
my house my own government?
your house, your own government.
Yeah, like I'm the head of the household as the man, right? Like I have a wife and two kids and two dogs and a picket fence, and we are
Mhm.
our own country and our own government. What stopped me from doing that? And Kapistan,
Well, I think the Republic of Dave is a really good idea. So I mean, you could do that.
the Republic of Dave.
Yeah, it's a follow reference, but
Oh, I actually didn't know that. I actually just watched the Fallout movie,
yeah,
not the movie, the
yeah.
series. But yeah, I don't know anything about that. But you think that's fine that I do that?
I mean, I really don't think it would be good for like any household to like establish a hierarchy based off of gender and then shut itself off from the outside world.
Let's
I
say
have
that
a
me
lot
and my
of,
wife rule equally.
I mean, I still would have a lot of reservations about your children.
Why is
But I mean,
that?
like you could do that. What?
I mean, I rule, right? I rule my land. It's my land. Anybody who comes on it has to abide by my laws. It's
Mhm.
my little square of paradise. Why can't I do that?
I mean, I think you totally have the rights to do so. I just personally, I don't know how I feel about that. It's like an
Why
idea.
not?
Like I said, you have the right to do so. I think that community is so
But
important,
but
and part of
you clearly have a problem with it. Why is that?
I have like an internal reservation about like just letting people atomize themselves to that extent. Like I don't think that's good for human
But
nature.
you said that smaller government is good.
Yes.
Smaller, more local
Yeah,
government. So I have the smallest
yes.
unit possible. What's
I
wrong?
don't. I mean, like I'm telling you, like I don't have an ethical issue with it. I just wouldn't find that a
But you
preferable
have an
form of
issue with it
socialization.
nonetheless. What's your issue?
I mean, I like in my personal judgment, I just don't think that's a good way to
Why not?
live.
Why?
Because you need a community.
A community. Okay, so how big should the community be?
However big people want it to be. I mean,
However
there's
big
it's
people
not
want.
like
So I want a
they
community
don't
of
want.
me and my neighbors. Me and my neighbors own a country. Is that good? Like me and my neighbors to the right. Just
Sure.
us. We own
I
a
mean, like I
country.
said,
That's
you can own
fine.
your own country.
Right, but
I
you
guess I
have
don't
a
really
problem
care.
with it. It's not a matter of can I do it or not. My issue my question is, do you have a problem with me and my neighbors to the right of my house, let's say the west of my house, owning our own country?
But the point of
Just us.
ethics isn't for me to impose my morality or like my personal opinions. Is to establish a universal system of how humans should interact. I'm not too into judging people for moral things. That's part of why I'm a libertarian. So,
But you
I mean, I
said
can't
that
even
smaller government is
articulate.
good and we need a
Yeah,
community. I have a community. My neighbors to the west, their house.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, I
Okay,
mean,
so that's
I
our
just,
community,
I
that's our
personally
government. Is
don't
that
value
good?
that.
Is that good?
I mean, it's permissible. I mean, it's not
It's
going to make a
permissible,
value
but you
judgment.
clearly think that there's something better. So what's better than that?
I think it would be preferable if people had like a town-sized community where they could have
Town
some division
sized,
of
you're getting
labor.
pretty big for me, man. Hold on a minute. I thought we were in favor of smaller governments that were more distinct from each other.
Okay, Alec, if you want to live in a shack on like the outskirts of town and not interact with us and you don't get any
That's not what I
services, like
want,
that's
man.
fine.
That's what you want.
No.
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
the
You
best
keep saying, but like, do you understand my point here?
I understand what you're saying, but I think
Okay.
it's a misconception.
No, it's not a misconception. You literally said that you're fine with me doing that, but you have you have certain after a certain point, you clearly have a problem with the government being smaller than what you perceive it to be, like the size that it should be. So what's the smallest size that you think it should be, and why?
I mean, I think it should be. I think it should be like a community size. Let's put it.
Which is how
But
big? Give me like a ballpark number. 100
like I said,
people?
I don't know.
1,000?
Maybe
What do you mean you
like a
don't know? You've
block would
clearly
be
thought
fine.
about this.
I mean, I thought about it, but like I said, like I don't like to make value judgments about communities.
This isn't about a value
Uh,
judgment. This is about your perfect slice of life. Like, what do you think is a perfect slice of life?
for me personally, like I would love in my own property to obviously be like in charge of my own property and then like
Okay.
still interact with other people. I wouldn't want to necessarily live in such a
Oh,
covenant
I'll
community.
interact with other people. I just own my land as a separate country.
Sure, that's how it should always be.
Okay, so I
Your
own
land,
my land as a separate country, and I interact with other people, and we all get along peacefully, right?
yeah, that's great.
Okay, so
Lovely.
then I own my own country. My neighbor owns their own country. My neighbor to the west and east both own their own country. The neighbors
Great.
across the street own their own country, right? And then one day, me and my neighbors across the street get into a fight. I say, hey, your lawn looks like shit. Clean it up. And they say, no, I don't want to clean it up. How can I fix that?
I mean, at this point, like we have a system, a legal system, obviously of property ethics. I
What
mean,
do you mean
they
a
own
legal
that.
system? We're in
I mean, that's the
Anarcho-Capitalist.
point of natural law.
No, no,
Like
no.
we have a
There's no
legal
legal
system.
system here. I own my own country, and so does the neighbors across the street.
Yes, you own your own property. They don't have a right to infringe your
But
property,
it's
just like
my
you don't have a right
country.
to
And
infringe
in
their
my
property.
country, the law of the land is you keep your grass 2 inches tall and no taller. They've made theirs 3 inches.
Right. Right.
And I don't
I
like
mean,
that.
you don't like that, but you're wrong to go aggress on their property, I guess. So,
Why?
I mean, you
Who's going
can
to stop me?
ask them.
You see how we're looping around, right? We always come back to
I don't.
every time we get into a small squabble, we're going to aggress each other because that's our recourse. Okay? In real
That
life,
is the
we have
recourse if you
homeowners
don't have private
associations.
property.
Huh?
That's the recourse if you don't have a system of private property.
What are you talking about? If
Like
I own, you said it's fine that I own my own country and the people across from me own theirs.
you can we know who owns the land, who has a right to use the land
What do you mean
because
we know? What if
homesteading.
I take it over? Who's stopping me?
Like
It's the same thing, man.
so at this point, like I could say like, oh, let's imagine we live in this great world where everybody's peaceful and we work together in a direct democracy. But there's like a big bad fascist country in the world, and they spend all of their resources on weapons that their people don't even want, and then they attack us. Who's going to stop them? Like
Good
it doesn't
question.
actually address the ideal form of social organization.
Who's
That
going to
is like
stop the United States right
nobody.
now?
We are the evil people in
Exactly.
the world. We are
Exactly.
the evil,
And I have a problem with
and you're
that.
happy with that. You have
No,
no
I have a
problem with
problem with
that.
that. No,
Okay, good.
no,
We
no,
both
no.
do.
What? Hold on. I want a democratically elected system of government such that the monopoly of power is owned democratically.
I
Because if
mean, it is
most people
now.
decide what happens with the monopoly of power, the majority of people, the likely outcome is that it's not going to be used for bad. That's the likely outcome. And this is not a perfect system, mind you. I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm saying this is the best system we can produce.
That's why a majority of Americans and almost the entirety of the United States Congress was so in favor of invading all these Middle Eastern countries because the majority makes good decisions, right, Alec?
You're right. We should have protections for the minority. I believe in that.
Right, but we saw in the United States, even in our society that's designed to be gridlocked and not really make progress one way or another,
Well, the tides are
when the state,
turning. So,
the tides are turning.
yeah,
Oh,
if you're talking about like violence in the Middle East, the tides are turning against
I'm glad public opinion
Israel.
shifted, but that
Yes.
doesn't mean, I mean, that doesn't disprove what I'm saying is that like
But
public
the alternative,
opinion is
okay,
dropping off.
but the alternative is one person or a small group of select people are in charge of the monopoly of power. Why do I trust them over the majority?
The reality is there would be no monopoly of power in this situation because of the
Yes, there
supply and
would.
demand
Eventually, there would.
relationship.
That's the
I
inevitable
don't believe
outcome.
that's inherent. If the
That is
inevitable
inherent.
outcome is that we have a state, I mean, your biggest offense is just that we live in the status quo again. So there's no downside. I
Say that
mean,
again.
like think about it, Alec. If the worst outcome of anarcho-capitalism is that the state arises, I mean, what are we really arguing against?
Is that the state arises because we reset to feudalism.
What do you mean we reset to feudalism?
The
Like the
biggest gun
state,
wins.
you think the people in power, like the most powerful people in medieval society, were they happy with feudalism?
I would imagine not, but they didn't have a fucking choice, did they? Like,
Well, they did.
they
That's why
bowed
they
to
got
their
rid of
feudal
it, Alec.
lords.
That's why they made the state. Like the state, the people that made the philosophy for the state, like Hobbes, Locke, like these were powerful people, and
Let
powerful
me ask
people
you
read
this:
their shit.
how does one
Yeah.
uprise against a feudal lord?
How does one uprise? How does one uprise against any higher authority? You just
I'm asking. No,
stop
this is a real
listening.
question. How? Because you can, but how do you
Yeah, and
revolt
it
against a
happened.
feudal lord?
Well, usually the peasants would just stop working.
Ah,
Um,
so a union
yeah,
of sorts, right?
yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. So then this is This is not anarcho-capitalism. This is anarcho-communism.
I mean, I don't. I mean, I've read a lot of anarcho-communist thinkers. I definitely like. I like most anarcho-communists who are actual anarchists. But I mean, the difference is I don't think I have a right to interfere in other people if they choose to establish like a capitalistic like hierarchy. And like Malatesta or like other anarcho-communists will always say that they have a right to infringe upon voluntary interactions if they perceive it to be coercive. So
But
that's the difference, Alan.
a capitalistic hierarchy entails that you are forced to work at the threat of death.
Scarcity entails that. I mean, I think we still disagree on this point.
Okay, yes,
Um,
you're right. The core of our disagreement is that you and I disagree that we live in a post-scarcity society. You're right. So can I prove
the
to you that we live in a post-scarcity society? Would you believe me if I proved that to you?
if you can prove to me that all humans could quit working, they could quit attempting to create food, and we would survive. I would accept that we could stop working.
Not
Sure.
all humans. I'm not saying all humans get to stop working. I'm saying we incentivize people to work.
Well, I mean, farmers fucking hate their jobs already, and we incentivize them to work, and they
How do
still
we
have a high
incentivize
suicide
them?
rate. So,
How do
what?
we incentivize them?
I mean, like, do you know what crop insurance is?
Crop
Like the amount of
insurance?
subsidies that the farmers get, it's insane. It's one of the most
Yeah,
subsidized industries in America.
they subsidize corn, and so we have a lot of
Yeah,
corn products. Imagine that.
like, you know what that leads to? Corn syrup. You know what that leads to? Obesity. That's what
Yeah,
happens when
so
you interfere with the
subsidize
free
other
market.
crops, incentivize other crops being grown.
They do. They incentivize all kinds of things. I'm just saying that like
But then
already in
why do
the
we have so
status
much
quo,
corn?
why do we have so much corn? Because they're subsidized to produce it. And well, now there's
Exactly.
actually
So
a demand
subsidize
for
the
it because of
others.
corn too. They do. They subsidize everything.
But
I'm just telling you, it's a
you're not
subsidized
making sense,
industry.
man.
Yeah.
They've subsidized all of it. Then why do we have so much corn? They subsidize the corn more, right?
Oh, okay. I mean, like, I don't know the specifics of they subsidize. I'm not a farmer.
But
It
what
is
I'm
one of the most
telling you is,
subsidized
we have
markets
so
in the
much
country.
corn syrup and corn fructose, whatever, like that because corn is
All
subsidized, right?
subsidies. Yeah, we agree
Right.
on that.
Right. Okay. So what I'm saying is spread out the subsidies, incentivize other crops to be grown. Does that make sense?
I mean, they already do. And the reality is that
No,
farmers
they
suck.
don't. Not nearly to the extent that
Yeah.
they do corn.
All right, we're gonna I'm gonna Google it because I guess we're at that point.
It's not to, and historically, it's not to the extent that they've done corn. Corn has a very long and rich history of being subsidized.
You're right. You're right. It's one
Okay.
of the things that people care a fuck ton about
Yes.
in history.
So what you're saying is that's because of subsidies. So subsidize other crops, incentivize other crops. What's wrong with that?
I mean, they do to some extent.
Okay.
I mean,
They should do more.
all I'm trying to illustrate is that we're already attempting to incentivize farming in general more than any other sector of the economy. Almost, I mean, maybe not fossil fuels, but
Yeah, and
we
we have
do a lot of
a surplus of food.
yeah, and that's because of the
Yes.
subsidies. But even still,
Yes.
there people don't want to be farmers,
So
even
wait,
with
you
all of these
agree that we
subsidies.
have a surplus of food, right?
Yes, because people are working
Okay.
to produce the food.
So that's telling you that we're post scarcity.
Okay, I'm going to define scarcity like in the way that It's defined in economics. It's defined almost anywhere. Scarcity is the fact that there is finite means and like infinite wants, right? So I mean, like we can have infinite desires, right, Alec? Like we can make a list like a million points long if we really sat down and thought about all the things that we want and all the things that we might need. And the reality is, if everybody actually went down their list and attempted to do all this stuff, they wouldn't be able to actually fulfill all of those needs and wants. So that's what scarcity is. We do not live in a post-scarcity world. You could say there is enough like food for everybody in the world. I could buy that, but like like it still has to be transported to people. It still has to be produced. There's still an opportunity cost to making the food. So we don't live in post-scarcity, Alec. That's obvious.
According to the World
It,
Food Program USA, it would cost $40 billion each year to end world hunger by 2030.
yeah, that's great.
So
But
yeah,
that
I
doesn't
would
mean
say
that like
that's
we just have infinite food, Alec. That means that we're subsidizing like farmers in developing countries, that we're creating infrastructure, we're incentivizing businesses to donate food they already have to quit misusing food because some businesses still do that. A lot of businesses don't, by the way. But like that doesn't just mean we have infinite food. There's still people working for the food. We are just working with the market to
yes, you
create
should
more for
incentivize
good.
the work, not
Yes,
hold
but
their lives over their
it's
heads. That's
it's
what you
still
want.
scarcity though, Alec. That's the point. That we don't live in
That's
post
not
scarcity.
scarcity. No, if you can end world hunger in a matter of 6 years, which is what this article is telling me from the World Food Program USA, if you don't believe that, that's fine. But if you can end world hunger in 6 years, I'd call that post scarcity. It's $40 billion a year. That's $240 billion. That's like a fucking penny to the government.
I mean, what is the plan? How would we end world hunger?
It's a good question. I don't have the exact answer to that.
Because
Let's see.
most development economists would just say like we just give money to states in like Africa and other countries, and like we send them advisors to teach them how to do things. That's usually the answer. And we've been trying that for decades, and it hasn't really worked. So
You can feed two hungry people a day for just $1. Every person who's able to fill their plate and reach their full potential has a positive ripple effect on the well-being of their families, their communities, and their nation. So, like, yeah, I don't understand. Like, if we can feed all the hungry people in the world, I feel like that's post scarcity, like by definition.
just because we are feeding them doesn't mean that the food is like infinite. Like we still have to work for it. We still have to sacrifice other
Yes, so
items
incentivize
to
them.
achieve it. Yeah, I agree. But
Yeah,
I mean,
you
I'm just saying
agree.
that it's not post
Incentivize them
scarcity.
because they'll die if they don't, right?
I think that any economic system can figure out how to supply basic needs to people. Yes,
By threatening them
and
with
that's
death.
important.
By
And
threatening them with
capitalism does
death.
that. There's nobody
Yes,
starving to death in
capitalism does that. You're
America.
right. Capitalism does that. Good point. That's why I'm
No,
an
no,
anti-capitalist.
no. Capitalism in America, there's nobody dying of starvation here.
What?
Like there might be people who are malnourished that like are have bad food access. Like yes, that exists, but like there's nobody like literally dying of starvation in this country. Like, there's options.
44 million people in the United States are food insecure.
Yeah,
13
you're right.
million children in the United States are food insecure. 49
Millions
people
of them.
million people turned to food programs in 2022. 100% of
So
US
true.
counties have food insecurity.
How many people literally died of starvation?
Is it a matter of death
I mean, like it makes
for
things
you?
worse. I mean, totally agree.
What if they're emaciated?
Emaciated. Not sure.
Their ribs showing. Is it fine if they're just starving to death? Like in the process of starving to death, they haven't quite died yet, right? That's fine, right?
Obviously, that's very bad. Um,
44 million people in the US face hunger, including 1 in 5 children. Is that okay?
no, it's really not.
No, it's not. We live in a capitalist society. Why is that happening?
With children in particular, I think it's just hard to get children food. They can't like obviously like
Would you
function on
guarantee
their own
children food in your
society. So.
society?
I mean, I don't think that you can have such a thing as a positive, right?
Yes, you
I like
can.
to think that I like to think that
Our
people would
prospective vice
supply food.
president, our prospective vice president guaranteed food to people in his state.
That's great.
Sorry, food to children in his state. Guaranteed it.
But there's still an opportunity cost. Like he's still sacrificing
What's
other
the cost
resources
of
to do
feeding a
that.
child?
What is
What's
the
too
cost of
much?
feeding a child?
What's too much? $10,
I
20?
mean,
What's too
probably costs
much?
like $2, like probably like $2 or $3 to
Two or
feed
three
somebody's
dollars?
school
No,
lunch.
I'm asking you, what's too much?
What's too much? I don't know. I think children
You
should be
don't know
fed. Like,
because feeding a child is essential, right?
yeah, totally agree.
Yes, no matter the cost. So we feed the children, right? In your society?
Yeah, I think charities would. I
No,
mean,
no,
it's
no.
proven
Not
lower
charities
taxes give more
would.
charity.
This is a matter of would you do it?
Would I feed children? Yes,
You
I would
set up
feed children.
society. Are the children fed?
Yeah,
Yes or no?
I set up society. Are
By
the children
necessity,
fed?
by mandate of your holy law, are children fed in your society? You're a dictator.
By the non-aggression principle, they're not, and that's really the only way you
They're
can
not.
organize
So you would
society.
let children starve in your society, right?
I don't think so. I mean, there's plenty of
What do you mean you
examples.
don't think so? Are they fed
That,
or not?
I mean,
Take a
like, okay,
position.
before the state existed and collected taxes and did all these things in an involuntary manner, there was already social organizations that existed and provided services for people. Like
This
if
is a
you
very
were,
simple question. Do children eat in your society?
yeah, yeah, obviously,
Free of charge?
yeah, yeah, charities always,
Okay. No, 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 not charities. You provide it, right? Somebody provides it.
yeah, somebody always
Somebody is
provides everything.
required to provide, not charities, because charities aren't required to provide anything.
Oh, the
They're
governments aren't either.
charities,
So
huh?
yeah. Governments are not required to provide anything either.
They are by mandate of the people who elected them into office. In
Sure.
my ideal
Well,
society, the people who are elected into office can have that ripped away from them at a moment's notice. That's
you
my
know what, Alec?
society.
If like 70% of people in America were like you, I would probably say like, you know what? I like this. Let's start changing how we look at politics. But
So you
that's not
like
how
my
it works.
worldview, right?
Yeah, I think
That's
it's
what
a
you're
good
saying?
idea.
Okay, yes. So children eat. Period. End of story. Children eat. And I am going to mandate that no matter what it takes. Would
I
you?
don't think that your worldview actually has like the like. First of all, I think it's unethical. I also
Why
don't
is it
think that like
unethical?
it ever
Children eat?
sense.
What's okay? Give me a scenario where a children eats and that's unethical.
All right, let's say I mean, if a child walks up to me for food, I think I have a positive obligation to give them food.
Okay.
Because they're not like a full moral actor. They obviously can't take care of themselves. So yeah, I have an obligation to. But if
Okay.
like a tax man comes and walks up to me and says, "We're going to collect taxes from you by force. If you don't accept, we're going to kill you." Basically, that's what happens if you don't pay taxes. Um,
What does this have to do with
yeah.
the children eating?
So then the tax man takes my money and gives it to the child. Do I think that's the right way to do it? No.
Yes,
Um,
I do. Children
if the
eat.
right way is
You
great.
eat too.
I mean,
You eat too. You're not deprived of food. But if you have excess money and the child has no food, and the only way to give that child food is to rip the money away from you, I'm taking that fucking money one way or another, man.
I mean,
That's my
that's
worldview.
a real it's a real great view of human nature that like there would just be tax collectors that are just altruistic and just allocate
You just
resources.
don't think
And
children should eat.
obviously, I care a lot about children.
Okay, do you care enough to rip the money from somebody who doesn't need it?
Would I personally do that? Yes. Is it ethical?
You
No.
would? It's not. Wait, why would you personally do it if it's not ethical? Do you believe in ethical systems? Do you believe that you
People
should be
don't.
ethical?
People like we can
Why would you
espouse or we
personally?
can.
Why are you admitting that you would personally do something that you personally find unethical? What pussy shit
Uh,
is that?
like first of all, the non-aggression principle is a legal system and legal philosophy. So like I could believe in that, and we should always espouse and like attempt to create society in that way. But like human action doesn't work in the way that like there's just one value that's like universally always above all others.
Like
Like
children
people are
eating?
complicated, situations are nuanced, human actors see things differently.
What's nuanced about a
um
child starving?
I mean, like it's nuanced as in any situation I'm in, like my first thought isn't always going to be doing what is like technically legally correct. Like I'm saying that like
But you
in the
said that
moment,
you would take by you
yes,
personally
I would.
would by force take somebody's money that they don't need and give it to a child so that they can eat. Yes?
I would. But that
So
doesn't make it
clearly
right.
in some sense or another, you believe that's ethical. Either that or you believe that you would act irrationally in that circumstance.
I mean, first of all human action is rational. Um,
All human action is rational, then you're acting rationally according to you. So you're
I
acting
mean,
rationally against your own moral principles in order to make sure a child eats. Yes?
I think that
Yes?
you can have principles in life. They don't decide every action you take in.
What the
And
fuck are
there's
you talking about? What is your
like
moral principle on child eating?
you could say like if you're a utilitarian.
Dude, you're not
Like
making any sense. You're not
I'm
making
trying to
a
explain this to
shit
you.
ton of sense, okay? You're not a shit lick of sense at all.
Like
Do
if
you
you're a
think
moral
it's
actor,
ethical to take
no,
somebody's money that they don't need and give it to a child that does need it?
no.
No? Then you would let the child starve.
That's not
That's
what
your
that means.
at least you're consistent. If that's your ethical principle and you would not take that money, at least you're consistent.
False,
I
false.
still think you're
Well,
a
I mean,
shitty
like
person, but at least you're consistent.
I don't. I think it's completely unethical to do that. I would still do that though. There's actions we do all the time that are
Why?
not legitimate
Why would you personally do it?
because I value the child being fed more than I value the legal system. That's
Then
obvious.
your ethical system is that that child should eat regardless of the consequences that the person who has more money than they need take. Yes?
That's not my ethical system. That's my
Dude, you're
personal
making
evaluation.
shit. You're not making any sense at all. You are spineless. You are completely spineless. You have no moral
What?
principles. Do you
Uh,
believe? I don't understand where you're coming from.
Okay, there's a universal law that you should not aggress upon other people.
What universal law? Who enforces it? God?
The non-aggression axiom. We know this
The
because
Non-Aggression Act. What does that mean? Who enforces the Non-Aggression Act? Who enforces it in Ancapistan?
rights enforcement, other people, yourself.
Other people?
Uh, yeah.
So other people decide that you don't get to take money from that person who has more than they need to give to the child. Is that correct? And therefore you won't do it?
They would say that's wrong.
I would say that's wrong.
Probably.
So it's not your moral principle. It's the moral principle of other people that you're answering to.
I mean, my belief is that like an ethical system is universal. I don't always make decisions that
You don't
align with the
have moral
ethical system.
beliefs, man. You're already
I don't have
saying
moral
you're
beliefs. You're
sitting here
right. I
telling
have ethical
me.
ones.
No, you're sitting here telling me that you don't even follow your own moral principles. What
I
the
mean,
fuck is that
nobody
shit?
does.
What do you mean nobody
It's pretty
does?
obvious, like we can have goals and we can have like values and like frameworks to view how society should be structured,
I follow
and
my
still
moral
acknowledge that
principles.
there's
I follow mine.
okay. So you think people should be so ideologically possessed that they should just act according to their moral principles in every single situation, have no other evaluations in life,
I
no
believe in the vacuum
other
situation
intrinsic
in which
beliefs.
a child is starving and you are faced with somebody who has more money than they need, you take the money from that and you don't have any money to your name. You take the money from that person and give it to the starving child. Yes.
I would do that. Is it justified? Is it like a legitimate use of
You
force?
think
No.
it's justified because you would do it. Why would you do it if it's not justified?
No. People do wrong things all the time. People acknowledge theft is wrong and still commit crimes. Like it's obvious.
It's not a
Like
matter of
you
it
can
being a
you
crime. A crime has
but
to do with
do you
legality.
genuinely believe like that people always act the way that they think they should act, like morally?
No, no, that's not
Exactly.
my
I'm just saying
point.
that we're
My
human.
point is this is a hypothetical, and you're saying in this hypothetical, yes, you would steal money to give to the starving child, but you still think that's wrong. Why would you, in a hypothetical situation that I am posing to you, do something that you personally believe is wrong?
Okay, the
You
act
don't
of
have
theft is
to.
wrong. I mean, I
You could
personally
say,
think we
hey,
have
start,
positive
let the child
obligations to
starve.
do.
Huh?
That's wrong. It's wrong.
What's wrong?
Is that universally wrong? No. Is it a right that the child is fed? No. But
Dude,
I would act
dude,
in that way.
dude, where do you stand on the moral principle of feeding children?
I think it's an obligation of individuals to do it. I don't think that can be
Okay,
universally applied.
so then it's the obligation of the person who has way too much money to feed a starving child, right? If they're the only one that
All right,
can
let's
do
do.
it.
I mean, yes, they should act in that way. I don't have a right to
Yes.
impose them to act that way. That's a
Why
personal
not?
evaluation at the end of the
They're
day.
not doing it.
They're not doing it. I mean, that's sad.
What do you mean that's
But I
sad?
don't
Oh,
have a
that's
right
sad the
to
child
infringe upon
died.
them.
You had a chance to make sure the child
No,
didn't die, but
like
you're not going to
if
do
we
it?
went around and just stole things from people all the time and thought it was legitimate because we knew how to use it better, I mean that's the end of that. It's just perpetual
If
conflict.
somebody's saying that that child is fine to die as long as I can own my yacht, yes, I believe that I know better than that person. Yes.
In any legal system, there's going to be moments when people do what they think is right, even if it's against the legal system. That's obvious. I mean, I think what I'm saying. I mean, I understand that you think it's like spineless, whatever. I mean, it's just true. Like
I
people
believe in
are
imposing
humans.
violence. I believe in imposing violence if it means a child doesn't die. Yes. I
You
believe in
believe
that.
in opposing violence if it means a child doesn't die.
In this circumstance, yes. I'm sure that you could give me a out of left field circumstance in which, yes, it's preferable that a child dies. I'm sure you could give me that. But
I mean,
in this
I think like
circumstance, huh?
in a real privatized society, I don't think the child would be starving. That's all I have to say about it.
I just don't. We live in a privatized society already, man.
Do we? Is that true?
Yes. This is the
Really?
same argument that you accuse socialists of making, I'm sure, where it's like there
I've
was
never
never any
accused.
real socialism or communism. There was never
I
any
mean,
real capitalism, right?
in this entire conversation, I don't think I've gone in depth at all about current quote unquote communist states.
But you just almost did. You're like, listen, in my ideal society where everything's privately owned, this wouldn't happen in the first place. How would this not happen in the first place?
I mean, there's a lot of studies that show that when there's less taxation, there's more charity. As I was telling you earlier about like the medieval ages before the state was formed, there was private charities that performed all of these social services, like the church.
I don't care. I don't give a shit. If it's not legally enforced, then I like it's not going to be a guarantee for the child. It should be a guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, a right has to be universally guaranteeable. You can never have a
Yes.
universal guantee to food. I
Yes.
guess
You have
that's
a
our
right to
argument
food.
here.
You have a right
You,
to
you,
food.
you can't have a right to something if it's not
Why
universally
not?
applicable.
It is universally
Because let's say
applicable.
we're
You have a
both
right
on
to
a desert
food.
island. There's one
Hmm?
coconut. We are in a
We don't
desert
live on a
island.
world with
There's
one.
one
We don't live on
coconut.
an island with one coconut, man.
Oh,
If we
okay.
did, we
We
would
don't live
fight
in
to
an
the
island.
death
I
over
mean,
it.
I entertained your analogy earlier, but I guess we can't.
Yes.
Oh, exist.
No, I know you are. Okay? But in a world where we have a plethora of coconuts for everybody,
Yeah,
because in
that's
my
true.
scenario, there was enough coconuts for both of us to last quite a long time. Yes? That was my scenario. But I said, you don't get
I
any
mean,
unless you suck my dick. Are you going to suck my dick?
I don't know if that's your scenario, but like you did take it from somewhere. Yes.
That was my scenario. It's not mine. I didn't come up with it.
Yeah.
But it was my scenario that I posed to you.
Yeah. Um,
So do you suck my dick or not?
I mean, that's a scenario. I mean, obviously people do, but I mean, it's
Yes,
not,
people
it
do
doesn't
because they
actually,
have to live. Do you think
it
that's fair?
doesn't actually
Do you think that's fair?
disprove, it doesn't disprove voluntary exchange. That's all I'm saying about that.
Do you think it's fair or not?
Do I, do I think the situation you're posing when there is a natural monopoly on a good that has never occurred in the free market, yeah, and somebody has to suck a dick for it? I mean, yeah, I don't know. Probably not
What do you
fair.
mean you don't know? Take a stance. Is it fair or not?
I would say it's probably not fair.
The
That's what I
alternative is you
said.
die. You suck a dick or you die.
I mean, at that point, it's still human
Would you do
action.
it?
Well, I just said it wasn't fair.
Yes,
But I
exactly. It's
mean,
not fair.
we don't have actual monopolies in the real world, so except for the government. So sad.
It's not a matter of it being. You have to work or you have to die. That's your choices in our current
All other
society.
things being equal, I mean, obviously, you need work to live. We've already established this. Like, yes, there's a surplus. People have to work to make food. So
There's a
we can.
surplus, and therefore there's a surplus, and therefore everybody should be fed. Distribute the fucking food. Do you think
I
it's
mean,
fair that a few people get to hoard the food while others starve? Do you think that's fair?
who's hoarding the food?
What do you mean hoarding the food? The grocery stores hoard it. They throw it away in dumpsters and then tell homeless people they can't go get it. That's hoarding.
Yeah, it's wrong.
Yes, it's wrong. We both agree that's wrong. So you would agree with government action that opposes that, right?
No.
Why not?
So I don't think you have to force people to solve these issues. Like I
Do
said,
those
there's
people
plenty of
deserve to
examples.
eat?
There's plenty of examples throughout. I mean, first of all, I've already like conceded to you like a long time ago. I mean, I've
Dude,
always held this belief that people could create their own smaller countries, kind of, and like they could legislate this. They could make sure
back up.
everybody eats.
Back up. Back up.
But
I'm asking you. The grocery stores throw away food that they prevent homeless people from accessing. Is that fair or not? It's fresh food.
it's not fair.
It's not fair.
Uh,
So do you
you want to know
agree
the reason?
with hold on. Do you agree with the government enforcing grocery stores to give that food to homeless people? Yes or no?
No, I don't.
Why
So I
not?
don't think the government's a legitimate
Because you
actor.
don't believe in a fair society, right?
I mean, you're a consequentialist.
You
So
don't believe in a fair society. Just say it. I don't
the only
say.
reason you
Repeat
believe
after me. I do not
I
believe in a
don't
fair
believe
society. Repeat after me. Go ahead.
I believe in a society where everybody
I do
has the
not
same
believe in
rights.
a fair society. Say it.
You believe in a society where certain people, because the majority wills it, which is an obvious fallacy, they
You
just have the
just
right
said that it's not
to allocate
fair that
things.
they do that, and yet you would let them do that. So you
Like,
don't believe in a fair society, right?
I mean, life, like, not everything is going to be viewed as subjectively fair to us. I mean, they purchase the good, they own the good, and I think it's fair they throw it
If
away
you
what they
okay,
want. I
if you
mean,
were
if there's
dictator,
people that are
if
hungry,
hold on, if you were made dictator of the world tomorrow, would you make it so that grocery stores give that food to homeless people? Yes or no?
if I was made dictator of the world tomorrow,
Yes.
I'd probably just destroy the government, if you ask me.
No, no, no. I'm asking in this specific circumstance. Somebody comes to you, says, "Hey, we have this situation where grocery stores are throwing away fresh food and homeless people are trying to get to it, and they shoot those homeless people dead."
I mean,
Would you enforce them to stop shooting those homeless people and give them the food?
another great thing is actually a lot of grocery stores on their own have come to the
You're
conclusion
not
that they
answering
should
the
just donate
question.
food.
You're not answering the question. Answer the
I don't
question.
need
Yes or
to.
no?
I don't need to force people to do this. It's
What
pretty
are you talking
obvious.
about? Yes, you do.
I say it's unfair. Like, I can make a value judgment. I don't have the right to initiate force against them for it.
Why not? Do you
It's
want people to
obvious.
starve? You're king
No,
of
I
the world.
don't. I mean, I mean, I haven't
You
said
don't want
like
people to
taking
starve, so you would
things
do
bad
it.
to happen to people.
You don't want people to starve, so you would do it. You would enforce that, right?
No, I wouldn't. I think there's
Okay, so
other
you do want
answers.
people to starve.
Obviously not.
Okay, so then you would enforce it.
Throughout this
Then
conversation,
you
have
would
you sensed
enforce
I
it,
have
right?
any
Then you would
disregard for
enforce
people?
them to give them the food, right? So that people don't starve, right?
No, I don't have a right
So
to
then
force
you do
people to
want
do
people to
things.
starve, right?
And no,
This is what I'm
the
talking
revolution,
about. You are
that's a false
spineless.
dichotomy.
You are a spineless
Wow.
piece of shit. You can't stand by any of your fucking values, man. None.
I'm not really getting upset with you at all. It's a false
I'm
dichotomy,
getting very
obviously.
upset with you because you have no values. You haven't thought about this shit for more than 10 minutes. If
I mean,
that.
obviously, I believe in the ethics. I don't like to impose
The
value
ethics
judgments on
my
people.
ass, dude. Go okay, goodbye.
All right, nice conversation.
Dude, it's so stupid. It's like, come on. I just think about it for 2 seconds. Ugh. I don't know what to say. I really don't. Like, there's no values there. There's zero values. There's no way he wasn't a troll. No, I believe that he believed everything that he said. It's crazy. Like, people exist like this. I can't believe that lasted as long as it did. It's so like, I'm not that smart. I'm really not. And like, I just feel like all you have to do is hold to a position. I'm sorry. It's just so funny. Like, how do you end up like that? By the way, I don't think that he's a bad person. I just think that he hasn't actually sat down to think about his shit. An economics student, exactly. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more, hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. If you enjoy my content, you enjoy what I do, I really appreciate any financial help that I can get. Go to youtube.com/AlecGunterTTV/join. You got some awesome benefits, such as seeing early videos, awesome emotes that you can use in the comments of YouTube videos, and a sweet badge next to your name. So if that sounds interesting to you, I'd really appreciate if you join. It is cheaper than the cost of a blowjob from your mom. So with all that being said, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.